What's good, everybody, and welcome to the episode of the JAYREELZ Podcast with your host, yours truly, Jai Shields, here on this Monday, July the 7th, 2025. Hope you guys had a nice, safe, and wonderful 4th of July weekend. We got a jam-packed show here for you this week. Lots to say, lots to discuss, lots to analyze, lots to dissect within the world of Major League Baseball. The Blue Jays are in first place and are clicking on all cylinders. Groundhog's Day for the New York Yankees. We'll lead with them here at the top. Update on how my Baltimore Orioles stand leading into their series against the New York Metropolitans. Jason Nazario, host of the JAYREELZ Podcast, will join me to discuss that series in particular. His New York Mets, who have found their way back on the winning track, taking 2 out of 3 from the aforementioned Yankees in the Subway Series at Citi Field over the span of this past weekend. His Pittsburgh Steelers, thoughts on bringing in Aaron Rodgers, the Jonnu Smith, Minka Fitzpatrick, Jalen Ramsey trade. We got you covered here on today's show, not to mention some NBA stuff. Damian Lillard got cut by the Bucks. They bring in Miles Turner. The Knicks find a new head coach in Mike Brown. For the Nuggets reloading with their free agency moves. I forgot to give you my 2 cents on the clusterfuck that is the NBA draft. Give you my 2 cents on that and some other things along the world, within the world of sports that we will get to throughout the span of this good show. But let us begin with the New York Yankees. And ladies and gentlemen, I got to raise my hand and be a little bit more convicted and a little bit more stubborn in not coming off of my opinions, because when I broke down the season and previewed the 2025 MLB season and gave you the reasons why I predicted certain teams to finish in certain places within their given division, why I predicted them to make the playoffs but not make it to the league championship series or win the World Series, whatever the case might be, I got to do a better job as a podcaster and as a talk show host to stand firm and dig my heels in and to not back down in my given preseason predictions, convictions, whatever the case might be, and not fall for a team's, nice, hot, fugazi stretch throughout the early stages of a given year. Ladies and gentlemen, I predicted the New York Yankees to finish in third place with a record of 84-78. And through the first 2 months of the year, I looked like a complete horse's ass in thinking that. Cody Bellinger was hitting, Paul Goldschmidt was a godsend, Aaron Judge was hitting 400, and also is leading the universe in home runs and RBIs and OPS alike. Max Fried was Don Larson. The New York Yankees couldn't do any wrong the first months of the year outside of the hiccups with Devin Williams, their new acquired closer from the Milwaukee Brewers. Month of June arrived. The June Swoon had begun, and the New York Yankees were back up to their old ways under my umbrella, hey. The Yankees back up to their old ways under the sensational, wonderful, comical umbrella that is Aaron Boone. And their month of June actually wasn't so bad. Now, granted, the preamble to the swoon that the Yankees have been on predates to late May, in which they lost 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers in their return to Dodger Stadium since the 2024 World Series. So this current swoon they've been on from June, now a few days into July, we can go back to late May, the last few days of May, and kind of connect the dots and how the Yankees got to where they are right now. And that's a few games out of first place within the American League East. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers. They proceed to get their teeth kicked in not once but twice in back-to-back weekends by the Boston Red Sox, once in Yankee Stadium, and then the other time, Father's Day weekend in Boston. They proceed to lose 3 out of 4 at home to the LA Angels of Anaheim because they could not hit their way out of a paper bag, and Aaron Judge all of a sudden fell into a massive slump. Then they host my Baltimore Orioles They take 2 out of 3 from them, and you're thinking, okay, can the Yankees build some momentum? For the first time, they trailed after 8 innings and found a way to win a game they had no business winning. 4-run 8th inning, highlighted by Jazz Chisholm, who was phenomenal that weekend for New York. And you're saying, okay, they're going to have some momentum. 3 games in Cincinnati. Then they come back home to take on the Sacramento Athletics. And then they got the Toronto Blue Jays to begin the month of July. And then they go to Cincinnati and they just get their tails kicked. They can't hit in game number 1. They lose yet again in extra innings, and albeit they did not lose an extra inning game since the last time we conversed because they did not play an extra inning game, you guys have to be made aware of this damning statistic surrounding the New York Yankees this season in extra innings. This is their offensive numbers, which is offensive if you're a Yankee fan, hilarious if you hate the Yankees, such as yours truly. This is the Yankees' offensive numbers in extra innings this season. Their slash line is 063, 2 hits and 32 at-bats, 0 of which have been extra base hits, 1 sacrifice fly, and 2 runs scored. The Yankees are not just bad in extra inning games, they are downright offensive. They are 12, especially on the road, where since the invention of the Manfred Man, which I can't stand, goes to the advantage of the road team. The Yankees are 12-27 in road extra inning games since the turn of the decade, 2020, the COVID year in which the Manfred Man was first established. That's the worst record in all of Major League Baseball in the last 5.5 seasons in that span. They are not just bad in extra innings, they are downright offensive, which is just a microcosm of just how bad the New York Yankees continuously have been. And again, I'll say to what I led this monologue with, and I'll repeat it again. I got to do a better job of holding my ground and sticking to my original thoughts and opinions and not allow a fugazi stretch of games to steer me off of the primary road I initially was on. I said preseason, you don't lose Garrett Cole for the year due to Tommy John. You don't lose Juan Soto and become, I should say, a better baseball team. It just does not happen. Those 2 guys are too great, too talented, and meant too much to the Yankees last year for me to sit back and believe that they were going to be a better team with one playing for somebody else and another on the shelf for the entire year due to Tommy John. I should have stuck with it at the time. And I said, you are counting on a Cody Bellinger. You're counting on a Paul Goldschmidt, 2 former MVP. You're counting and expecting and wishing and hoping those former MVPs return to MVP form for a whole season, not for a month or 2 month or 2.5 month stretch, throughout the better part of a whole 162. You're hoping and wishing that those guys play at an elite level from start to finish. You are hoping and wishing that when Giancarlo Stanton came back from his injury from his elbow injuries, that he was going to get back to producing at an elite level and not essentially take him a month and a half to get his swing down. Well, last I checked, he's hitting .222 for the season, and I believe only has 1 home run on the year. So Stanton, who is older, not getting any younger, the injury list for him continues to grow larger, and you're on a chicken wing and a prayer that Giancarlo Stanton is able to be the big bopper for you this year like he was for the Yankees in October of 2024. Yes, 1 home run, 7 RBIs thus far. You're counting on an Oswald Peraza, who stunk. You're counting on an Austin Wells. Hit a home run yesterday, but he's hitting .220 for the year. You're counting on a DJ LeMahieu. He's hitting .266, been relatively respectable. But if you're a Yankee fan that's watched DJ LeMahieu play for the last handful of years, you know that there's a time limit with DJ LeMahieu playing good baseball. It's not going to last forever. He is what he is. He's on the downward slope of his career. He's far from his prime. You're counting on Aaron Judge to be essentially a demigod with a baseball bat in his hand. And newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, he's not. He's human. He slumps like the rest of them. He's not going to hit 400. He's hitting 360. Still great, but in order for the Yankees to win at the elite level as they were to start the year, they need Aaron Judge to be essentially Barry Bonds. And when he's not Barry Bonds-esque, and especially when he's in a slump, the Yankees don't go. They go as far as Aaron Judge takes them. That's how it's been outside of 2024 where they had Soto. That's the way it was in 2023 when he did play. I know he was banged up that year. That's how it was. That's how it went in 22. That's how it went in 21. That's how it went in 20. That's how it went in 18. That's how it goes. Outside of 2024 was the outlier because they had Juan Soto there, and really kind of sort of 2023 because he got banged up, hurt his toe at Dodger Stadium, and missed 90% of that season's summer. But for 22 and 21 and 20 and 19, how Aaron Judge goes, if he's here, the Yankees are here. If he's here, the Yankees are here. If he is in the sewers, the Yankees are down in the pits of hell. And Mike Francesa made the point on his podcast, and I should have made this point about the Yankees because it's really been their MO for the last X amount of years. You know, they are a front-running baseball team. I mentioned when I glossed over that victory that they had over the Orioles a few Sundays ago, that was the Roku game at Yankee Stadium, in which they beat the Orioles by the final score of 42, and I said they had been absolutely a baseball team when trailing after 8 innings. Because that's exactly what the case is with this team. They do not come back. They're not a good comeback team. They're down 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 runs, especially after 6 or 7. Wipe your hands, clean your hands, start the buses. And start spreading the news because the Yankees done lost another baseball game. They do not come back in games down 2 or up to a 6-run deficit. They don't come back and win games. You got the Yankees after 6, after 7. So the good likelihood that the game is won, you just got to collect the remaining outs to make it official. They're a front-running baseball team. They're great when they can bludgeon bad starting pitching and get to weak links or sacrificial lambs in a team's given bullpen, where 1-0 becomes 3-0, becomes 5, becomes 7-0, becomes 12. I mean, you just look at the Yankee. I said it prior to that series at Yankee Stadium, where just take the Orioles and the Yankees just in general. Their matchups, their games against one another. Look at the game that the Orioles won that Friday night Yankee Stadium a few weeks ago, and look at the 2 victories that the Orioles got against New York early in the season in late April. You know what the common theme is? The common theme is that all 3 of those games were nip and tuck 1-run games, 1, 2-run affairs. The Yankees don't do well in those nip and tuck white knuckler 1, 2-run affairs. And you take a look at the games that the Orioles lost outside of that blown 2-0 lead. You take a look at the Saturday before. The Orioles got their asses kicked. Yankees offensive avalanche, caught momentum they couldn't stop. The game in between, which Kyle Gibson gave up home runs left and right in the first inning or so. In that game, what happened? Avalanche. Yankees pounced on the starting pitching early, poor starting pitching, I might add, and was able to allow the momentum to increase and the Avalanche continue to build and build and build and build and build. And the next thing you know, the game's over by the end of the 4th inning, if not earlier than that. But when you hold their offense at bay where they don't go nuclear, and you say, hey, can you win a game 3-2? Can you win a game 5-3? Can you win a game 2-1? That's where the weaknesses of the Yankees come to the surface. The piss poor base running, the lack of fundamentals, the piss poor situational hitting. Want to know one of the reasons why the Yankees are so bad in extra inning games, especially on the road? Because they lack the piss poor fundamentals that it takes to win those extra inning games when you are given a free automatic base runner 180 feet away from home plate at second base. They don't bunt, and when they do try to bunt, they're such a piss-poor bunting team that they embarrass themselves and they showcase how poor they are fundamentally because of the fact they can't do a simple task such as moving runners over with the leadoff man up at the plate. They can't bunt, and when they do try to bunt, they do it poorly. They lead the universe into running into outs on the bases. Lead the universe. And the defense is sloppy. Can't catch the ball, can't field the ball, can't throw the ball. Jazz Chisholm, who is a second baseman in the Yankees with Cashman and Fishman, love to show off how smart they are, and they want to play Jazz Chisholm, who's been a sensational Yankee in the whole context and in utter fairness to Jazz Chisholm. Salute, tip my hat on all objectivity. He's been a sensation. Don't get it twisted. I'm putting 100 on 10 a little bit, but you get what I'm saying. He's been a damn good, respectable Yankee since they traded for him at the deadline last July. But he's not a third baseman. He's a second baseman. They play him out of position. Why? To placate one of Judge's buddies in DJ LeMahieu. And that brings me to this. And don't worry, I'm going to get to Volpe and Boone in a minute. I've said it about Judge, and I'll say it again. He is one of the best talents I've ever seen suit up in uniform on a baseball field. He's one of the greatest right-handed hitters, if not the greatest right-handed hitter I will ever see in my entire life. He is a tremendous talent and a tremendous player and a tremendous hitter. And his postseason shortcomings, put that off to the side for a minute. I've said it once, and I'll continue to say it until he proves me otherwise. Aaron Judge is a great player, great talent, transcendent Hall of Fame talent. He is about as piss poor of a leader as you can get for a player of his elite production and magnitude. Aaron Judge is such a piss poor leader. If I was a Yankee fan, I would borderline come to resent Aaron Judge because of how just blasé and indifferent and underwhelming of a locker room presence he projects out to the public. I mean, the Aaron Boone-esque word salads after game. I mean, I'm going to find you the quote that he had the other day. I mean, because I couldn't. This is the best player by far on the New York Yankees and one of the best talents they've had in a long. I mean, like I'm talking about like Derek Jeter-esque elite talent. Now, he's not Jeter in terms of obviously the rings and the postseason production and the leadership qualities and everything else. But, I mean, one of the best players in all of baseball, the best player in baseball not named Shohei Ohtani, pound for pound, especially as a hitter. And he goes ahead, and this is on Saturday when they got their asses handed to him by the Mets. He got asked after the game if the losing streak takes a toll on the clubhouse. His answer was no. His answer was no. And among other things, no one needs to panic. No one needs to really get up in arms. You don't have to do anything drastically different than what we've been doing. I mean, the level of cluelessness and delusion, which is breeded in a disgusting level of arrogance with this team, is maddening. I mean, Aaron Boone literally had the temerity, the audacity, the chutzpah, the unmitigated gall to say after the Blue Jays series that, yeah, we're the best team. We're the best team in the American League. We're one of the best teams in all of baseball. Have you watched your team play? Have you watched your team play? Outside of the last few games, And a large part of why you all haven't been winning outside of these last 3, 4, 5 games is because of the fact you couldn't hit. That's number one. You're hitting with runners in scoring position, especially in the Red Series, was abysmally bad. It was borderline insulting to see just the piss poor approaches you guys had at the plate throughout the month of June. So that's a crock. Your bullpen has been pathetic with an ERA of over 10 in your last handful of games. And your starting pitching outside of Max Fried hasn't been ideal. It's not primarily to blame for what was this little 6-game stretch that you guys were on. It was more so your bullpen, but let's can we call a spade a spade? And that brings me to Aaron Boone. He never, ever, 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 ever can call a thing, a spade a spade. He can never tell it like it is and keep it 100. And this is why I can't listen to the comments where people say, well, what do you want? What do you expect from him? He's a puppet. It's really Cashman pulling the string. I understand that. But like I said, in relationship to my manager early on in this baseball season, even if he's not the one that's making the decision when to go to the bullpen, he's not the one writing the lineup card. It's all come from the front office and computers and Excel spreadsheets, yada, yada, yada. The part of his job description that he is single-handedly responsible for, that has nothing to do with Fishman, that has nothing to do with Cashman. The one lone part of his job responsibility that he is in charge and responsible for and of, that ain't got nothing to do with the front office, he consistently yet again continues to fail each and every single freaking season. And that is the element of accountability and responsibility with his players. And if you're going to sit up here and tell me that it doesn't matter, then get rid of the managerial position altogether. But so long as that position continues to exist and they continue to pay guys in the low 7 figures, high 6 figures to be a major league manager, we're going to continue to call out the incompetence at that given position. It's no different than when I'm about to rip Anthony Volpe a new one because I've had enough of him to last a freaking lifetime. I'm not a Yankee fan, and I'm sick of watching Anthony Volpe. I digress. Back to Boone. He refuses to hold his guys accountable. He can never just get up behind a microphone and say, you know what, we played like pure D shit this afternoon or pure D shit tonight. He doesn't have to call anybody out by name. He doesn't have to necessarily throw anybody under the bus. All he has to do is just state the obvious. We are bad. We are playing like crap. That's all he has to say. That's all he has to say. When Anthony Volpe is falling all over himself and is throwing the ball left, he's missing easy put outs at first base, throwing the ball into the first row behind the first base dugout. He's like the play that he made in Toronto where he dives, makes the play, keeps the ball from going into left field, and puts together one of the worst throws I've ever seen in my life. The third base gets away. It's still, and the level of excuse making that Boone made. It's like, come on. Who are you playing for a fool here? It was a dumb play. It was a bad play. Call him out on it. Hold him to a standard. Make it known to the press and to the Yankee fan base alike that this is not going to be acceptable, and plays like that are not going to help us win games. Not, well, he makes that play, 99% of the time. Give them credit. No. None of this give him credit. None of this, well, he makes that play the majority of the time, but all shucks, he didn't make it this play. What are you going to do? No, none of that crap. That's all he does. Is make excuses and gives these guys a pass for their piss poor play. That's all he does. That's all he does. You never see him cuss him out either up the runway tunnel or just have a constructive conversation. Coach and player sitting on the bench with the iPad looking at the play. We see it happen all the time in football. We see it happen all the time. You don't always have to be cussing and screaming and throwing shit at him. Just sometimes, hey, in between when he's in a dugout and he's not due at bat, hey, look at the play and just say, what was your thought process here? And just grill it in his head that you can't make plays like that because you're giving away extra outs, and if there's any runners on base, you're gifting them an extra 90 feet. That's bad baseball. Bad baseball in 2025, 2015, 1955. It's just bad baseball all the way around. Always has been, always will be. And instead of making that known, he likes to dance around the mulberry bush and think that Yankee fans are eating beef, and he's trying to pass it off as tofu. I don't get it. I do not get it. The lack of accountability is damning within this team. And then they wonder why they don't win anything. They point to, the record. We make the postseason. We win 90-something games. We win the division. Do you guys ever think, I'm talking to the Yankees when I say, you guys ever think that sometimes the results that you get are in spite of your flaws, not a direct result of them? You know how to are so fundamentally flawed that you almost like it doesn't register. It's a meaning for a functioning alcoholic, and the alcoholic says, well, I'm not blackout drunk. I can function. I can go to work and do my job, and I don't need, help doing X, Y, and Z and da-da-da-da. And the person that's talking to the alcoholic says, yeah, like God bless you, you may be able to drive while inebriated and not come close to getting into a car accident. You may be able to do your job to the absolute best of your abilities while intoxicated. You're able to somewhat live your life somewhat productively while being an alcoholic. That doesn't mean that it makes it appropriate for you to be an alcoholic. Just because you can doesn't mean that's the way it should be done. Sure, the Yankees can win division titles, can make the postseason, can win over 90 games, and be an absolute laughingstock in terms of their piss poor defensive and base running fundamentals. Doesn't mean it's the way to be for a baseball team that at least I last checked is and should be in the business of trying to win a World Series championship. Where's the standards? Where's the pride? Is it just be good enough just to be in the conversation, just be good enough to get in and then lick your finger and hold it up to the wind and see which direction the wind blows come October? Because that's what it feels like. I mean, just again with Boone, the lack of accountability, it's insane. He never just comes right out and says, "Yeah, we stunk tonight. That play has to be made. That ball has to be caught. That throw cannot be made in that situation." When does he grab, his own Johnson and onions and say, you know what, damn it, grown ass man, leader of men, I got to be a little bit more assertive here instead of being, the locker room therapist, patting everybody on the ass, everybody on the head. Oh, good little boy, good boy, good boy. You're a great player. We're a great team. There's nothing to worry about. It's them, not us. It's just the same song and dance, and then they wonder why they don't win. And his handling of Anthony Volpe angers me. Legit low-key pisses me off because I can't stomach looking at Anthony Volpe. I can't do it. I cannot. I'm an Oriole fan that could give two horse fucks about how good or bad the Yankees play, and I've had it. This guy is damn near a bona fide scrub. A bona fide scrub. I don't care about his gold glove. He is I mean, he is the most useless baseball player I've seen this side of Jorge Mateo. That's how bad he is. He can't field. He can't hit. He does nothing well on the baseball field. He is a black hole at shortstop. He is a black hole in a Yankee lineup. He never, I mean never. Here's his slash line in the month of June. Batting average of 205, on base percentage of 290, slugging a 375, OPS of 665. Anthony Volpe is trash. Trash. Hitting 219 for the season, 10 home runs, 48 RBIs, OPS of 694. In his last 7 games, that's 30 plate appearances, hitting 133 with an on-base percentage of 133, a slugging of 267 with 7 strikeouts, 1 home run, and only 4 RBIs and 0 walks. And all the Yankees did for time immemorial is hype this guy up to be the next Jeter just because he met Derek Jeter one time and he's from Jersey and grew up a Yankees fan. And somehow, some way, the genius brass within the Yankee organization thinks it's appropriate and acceptable to essentially make this guy a common staple within the Yankee lineup, batting him 5th and 6th, and sometimes in the early parts of the season, leadoff when he can't hit his way out of a paper bag. Meanwhile, the Jason Dominguez's of the world that is hitting the ever-living cover off the ball. Listen, is he Bo Jackson in the outfield? Absolutely not. Is he more so of the likes of Aaron Hicks in the outfield defensively? Yeah, he is. But you know what, damn it? The Yankees need pop. The Yankees need speed. The Yankees need production. And the Yankees need some life. And they need some competent players in their uniform that give them a better opportunity to win on a given game day. Jason Dominguez is hitting 267, 8 home runs, 33 RBIs on an OPS of 771, who is hitting 392 with an on-base percentage of 418, a slugging of 608, in 51 plate appearances. That comes out to 2 home runs and 7 RBIs, 4 stolen bases. Does he strike out a little bit too much for my taste? Yeah, but he's a young player, 21, 22 years of age. 22 years of age, was born in 03. 22 years of age, he'll come out of that with time. All I know is that he slashes. He gets on base, he slashes, and you know what? He brings something that the Yankees haven't had in a long-ass time. That speed and athleticism. Not a bunch of stiff bums that do nothing but strike out, hit home runs, and just exist. And run into outs on the bases. And I got him batting 6th and 8th and 7th. He should be the Yankees' everyday leadoff hitter, no exceptions. And what do the Yankees do? They turn around and I understand they went with the whole defensive lineup because the analytics say that you got to put your best defensive lineup out there with Max Fried pitching. Take the analytical. I am so sick and fucking tired of the analytical bullshit in baseball today. You have absolutely no idea. Take the analytics and shove it. Dominguez should be hitting leadoff every single day. Every single day. They love to play the platoon garbage with him, and yet Anthony Volpe gets 90 trillion chances. You know what this reminds me of? And why I'm probably angry and don't even know it? You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me with my team. We'll play games and we'll platoon Kyle Stowers and early on Colton Cowser, and we'll platoon them and play games with them and won't allow them to get their feet wet and allow them to get themselves established and ingratiated within the fabric of the team. Yet the Jorge Mateos of the world get infinite out, and the Ryan McKenna's of the world get infinite opportunities to fuck up and literally put this team behind the 8 ball every single time their feeble asses touch a given field on a particular game day. Probably why because I'm having Vietnam flashbacks. Because my team did the same damn stupid thing and won nothing because of it. with the favoritism game. It's enough. He is as unclutched and as useless on the baseball field as it gets. I understand what you're going to do. Trade for shortstop mid. I understand that. Oh, you're going to bet? You're going to demote Volpe? Yeah, they probably should have. They probably should have. They should have sent down Anthony Volpe last year when he couldn't hit his way last year, when he was making errors in the field last year, throwing the ball over the infield last year. They should have demoted him then. They didn't. God knows how many opportunities they've had to send his ass down to Scranton, and they've refused to do so. Hell, could you take him out of the lineup where he doesn't play 3 days? It's insane. It really, really, really is insane. As my guy Adam Shine says,
Yankees are dumb. I mean, a stupid-ass baseball team.
The Yankees are a dumb, stupid-ass backwards baseball team. They are. They are. Flawed, top to bottom. They are. They are. And they got no Clark Schmidt for the rest of the year. Needs Tommy John. Because essentially you're going to be on the head and shoulders of Max Fried and Carlos Rodon if he isn't playing home run derby batting practice pitcher, which he was on Saturday. Or Friday, whatever day that was. It's just it was Saturday. Stroman pitched Friday. They are so just like no accountability. What is the standard anymore? Like what is the standard with the Yankees? What's the standard? Is the standard just to be good enough and ride our way on the waves of mediocrity on the coattails of the real Yankee greats? And just ride on the pomp and circumstance of the interlocking NY and the pinstripes? Or is it to, win and become something to hate? Now the Yankees they've always been a hateable, unlikable just team and organization, but now they've become hateable and unlikable for a different reason. See, they used to be they were hateable and unlikable because they won all the time and they were the cream of the crop and they were so much better than everybody else because they are. And you hated them out of jealousy. Now you hate the Yankees because they remind you of that pompous, arrogant SOB that either your neighbors with, you work for, you went to school with, that carried themselves and walked with their nose up at the sky like they were so much better than everybody else, when it was clear and apparent to everybody that actually, if you want to engage in an argument, they're inferior to everybody else. And they walk around thinking that this shit don't stink just because of XYZ, because of who their daddy is, who their mommy is, how much money their parents make, or how much money that their family has, who their parents are, and their last name, any celebrity, legacy status, all that other sort of stuff. The Yankees are now hateable for that reason. And Yankee fans and management alike, those who care, will be the first to tell you, I'd rather be hated because we win, not hated because we're so damn smug and arrogant that teams realistically look down on us because of how much of a pathetic joke and a laughing stock we've become. And Cashman and Volpe and Boone are the three stooges that signify everything wrong with the New York Yankees. Remember when Cashman sat up there arrogantly in the offseason they acquired Soto, saying, well, get back to me in Volpe's second or third year. And he'll be so much better than everybody. The arrogance, the balls, the chutzpah. This is a guy that all those free agent shortstops were available, the Carlos Correas of the world, the Corey Seagers of the world. Cashman didn't touch him. Why? Because he thought he had the next Jeter and Volpe. And Volpe stinks. Okay? He stinks. Give him credit. Jazz is the new Robinson Cano. Congratulations. Congratulations. Volpe stinks. You think about all the free agents that have been available that the Yankees should have signed and didn't out of Cashman's own arrogance. The Harpers, Machados, go on and on. I mean, the New York Yankees have they got over $300-something million payroll, and they got glaring holes in more than one position. How in the hell is that possible? They don't have a third baseman. Their catching position is rather weak. You're the New York Yankees. And how many years has it been since you've been without a bona fide third baseman? Since the days of what? Josh Donaldson? And even his later years as a Yankee were ugly. They can't help themselves. This is a year where literally preseason through May, everything for the Yankees went their way. From bringing in Max Fried, from bringing in Bellinger, bringing in Goldschmidt, Mike Elias's pathetic, feeble offseason. Everything went their way. Everything went their way. They let Clay Holmes go. They start the season on fire. Judge is hitting 400. Bullpen outside of Devin Williams was great. Orioles can't get out of their own way. The Red Sox have the little mutiny when they bring in Bregman, and then Devers doesn't hit the first 2 weeks of the year. Costas breaks his leg. No one expects anything out of the Blue Jays or the Tampa Bay Rays. Everything breaks their way. First place by a country mile, we're thinking shit. The rest of this division is so damn terrible. The Yankees are going to win this division by default and going to have it locked up by the middle of August. Everything broke their way from the offseason winter to the first month and a half, 2 months of the year. And somehow, some way, the New York Yankees, 49-41, only 8 games above 500 and 3 games out of first place. In a year in which the Orioles are in last place, coming off the backs of a poor offseason, in the same year in which the Red Sox only a game above 500 when they had a lot of expectations and praise in their favor on their side heading into this year, with a beaten-up Alex Bregman, Costas with a broken leg, and 2-3 weeks since they traded away Rafi Devers. And the Yankees somehow, some way, blew a nice, healthy lead in the division and now have to contend and compete with the Rays and the Blue Jays for American League East supremacy. You can't make it up. And again, Judge, great player, piss poor leader. And he said, I couldn't believe he said this. So this is when they lost on Wednesday night in Toronto. This is what he said during the team at the time, their 6-13 drought. Said, quote, we're going to go through 2 of these a year. Every good team does. Another thing the Yankees love to do, they love to talk out of their ass and gaslight. Word vomit will just come out of their mouth, and they'll say it in such a convincing tone that you are led to believe that they're right and what they're saying is gospel. But courtesy of @Yankees Light on Twitter, they went back and they fact-checked this. This is between 2020 and 2024 of the teams that won 90 or more games in every single one of those years, and the equivalent winning percentage in the case of 2020's case, it was only a 60-game season, to see if any teams that won 90 or more games from essentially 2021 through last year went through a 6-13 stretch or worse in the given seasons. Okay, so in 2020, the worst stretch was 4-15. The 556 winning percentage, which comes out to winning 90 games at minimum. Teams that had an equivalent of a given stretch or worse, 0. 2021, the Yankees' worst stretch, 10-22. Number of 90-win teams with an equivalent worst stretch in that season, 0. 2022, Yankees' worst stretch that season, 10-17. Number of 90-win teams with an equivalent stretch, there was 3 that year, so a little bit of an increase. 2023, they went 12-21 was their worst stretch. Number of 90-win teams with an equivalent worst stretch was 2. Last year, worst stretch was 12-24. Number of 90-plus win teams with an equivalent stretch of an equivalent stretch of games, if not worse, which was 0, which is damning considering how bad my team was in 2024. In that 5-year period, only 5 out of 41 teams, there have been 41 teams that have won 90 games in the last 5 years. That's the Yankees. Only 5 of those 41 matched the Yankees for having a quote-unquote worst stretch in a given season. Even more notably, out of the 5, no repeating teams. The Blue Jays, Guardians, and Mariners did it in 2022. The Rays and the Rangers did it in 2023, which means essentially there have been one-offs, but no team has been more consistent with those poor stretch of games no team has been more consistent with their poor stretch of games, none other than the Aaron Boone-led New York Yankees. They go through this every single year. The June swoon that carries into July, that carries into early August, and then they say, oh shit, the playoffs are about a month away. Let's get our ass in gear. And then they sprint towards the finish line, and then they go back to the summer swoon once they get deep into the postseason in October when they play last year the Dodgers. In the rare case they got to the World Series, but typically either the Red Sox or the Astros. And if it's not the Red Sox or the Astros, people fall for the Fugazi and then beating up on the joke that is the American League Central, which has been nothing more than a Yankees' personal postseason punching bag for the better part of the last decade plus. So, but it never happens. Every team goes, this is Judge's quote, it's a normal part of the game. We're going to go through these stretches twice in a given season. Every good team does. No, Judge, not every good team does. But when you're under my umbrella, hey, under the umbrella and the illusion of Aaron Boone's nonsense, stuff like that happens in the dust. I mean, I picked them to finish 3rd place, and in this last 3 weeks, now you see why. The team, though, that is in 1st place atop the American League East is the Toronto Blue Jays, and God bless them, give them a lot of credit. They have hit the cover off the ball. George Springer was the hottest hitter in all of baseball throughout last week, earned American League Player of the Week honors for what it's worth for his great efforts. The starting rotation now is starting to level out and even out, equal with the New York Yankees, especially now that Clark Schmidt is gone for the year. Their bullpen was a problem early on in the season. It settled down. The Toronto Blue Jays are on a groove right now where they can just do no wrong. Currently riding an 8-game winning streak. They've won 9 out of the last 10, sweeping the Yankees and the Angels respectively back-to-back in their 7-game homestand. Their win streak, though, dates all the way back to June 29th when they beat the Red Sox in Fenway by the final score of 5-3. They got a nice 6-game layup of a road trip heading into the All-Star break. 3 against the White Sox, 3 against the Sacramento A's before they hit the break. They have just done an absolutely sensational job. This was a baseball team I predicted was not going to do well. Certainly did not take the cheese for how well the Toronto Blue Jays were going to end up playing this season, and they've done an absolutely hell of a job with a nice cushion, with an easy schedule to boot, and heading into the break. It's just something I did not see coming at all for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2025. They're in 1st place atop the East. I expect it to be temporary. Tampa will have something to say. eventually. The way it's going for the Yankees, especially with the injury to Clark Schmidt, it would not surprise me if this team misses the playoffs and finishes in third place with an 82-80 record again, if not worse. The way it's going, I got to see the Yankees snap out of it and have it stick for months on end. I'm talking about whatever the baseball they got. They got the rest of July, all through August, all through September. I got to see it because the Yankees, in my estimation, are heading towards a path where they could barely finish above 500, if not finish at 500 at all, be in third place and miss the postseason when it's all said and done. But the Blue Jays in first place. In terms of my Orioles, listen, they're doing what they should do, and that's handle business. Trevor Rogers pitched his ass off against the Atlanta Braves yesterday afternoon. Only ran into about an inning or two of trouble and was able to work out of it, get the needed strikeout pitches and the double play balls, which were plenty in that series against the Atlanta Braves. The Orioles bullpen has done a solid job, all things being considered, in tight competitive games. I do not like the fact, though, that they had an opportunity with the bases loaded and Ramon Arias up in the top half of the eighth inning. They had an opportunity to put that game away, and they failed to do so. And Sir Anthony Dominguez gives up the one-out solo shot in the top of the ninth inning and allows the tying run to come to the plate with the game-winning run on the on-deck circle. I did not like that. I thought it screamed deja vu of the 2-0 game that they blew against the Yankees the last time they were on the Roku channel a few Sundays ago. But they're able to win the tight one-run games, and on Friday and on Friday night and on Sunday. Which, I mean, listen, the Atlanta Braves are not that good. They are beaten up with injuries within the top of their rotation. The Iglesias, who's been their closer, the back end of the bullpen hasn't held up his standard of play, and the lineup has been very streaky. They do not hit well with runners in scoring position. They do not hit well with the bases loaded throughout the course of this season. So, but give the Orioles credit. 2 out of 3 one-run. 2 out of their 3 victories were via the one-run variety, which is what it's going to take for a playoff team's got to find a way to win one-run games, low-scoring one-run games at that, on the road. And then they scratched and fought, and that's the type of games. This is Saturday's victory. That's the type of game I love to see the Orioles play. Those games where they say, you know what, damn it, we are not going to lose this game. We don't care how many home runs you hit, how many runs you score, we're going to keep on coming, and we're going to keep on punching back and fighting back until that game is rightfully ours. And that's exactly what they did on Saturday. I mean, they give up some early offense there in the bottom of the first with a 2-run home run hit by Austin Riley to take an early 2-0 lead, and they respond with 3 of their own in the third. Braves get 1 back in the bottom of the third inning, and the Orioles respond with 2 in the fourth of their own. Braves respond with 2 in the fourth of their own right back. Scoreless in the fifth. They trade runs in the sixth and seventh. And Jacob Stallings, of all people, the high-end talent, so to speak, to save the day with a clutch 2-run double to give the Orioles a 9-6 lead, which ended up being the difference in their victory in extra innings against the Atlanta Braves on Saturday. I love when this team fights and plays with an attitude of they just refuse to lose and they are willing to win the game no matter how long it takes, at all costs, by any means necessary. Playing with that attitude, with that level of tenacity, is what this team has desperately lacked throughout the course of the entire season. And if they can put together more wins and play with that attitude more consistently, they will give themselves a hell of an opportunity entering into the dog days of summer. But a much-needed sweep of the Atlanta Braves after yet another no-show, losing back-to-back games, the first and the second of the month last Tuesday and Wednesday, against the Texas Rangers. I mean, just no pitching. Again, the same song and dance with Mike Elias. Brandon Young, who gets the ball in game 1 against the Mets on Tuesday. I'm full of it's Monday, and I'm well mentally equipped and prepared for the Orioles to lose that game on Monday, because Brandon Young is not a Major league starting pitcher by any stretch of the imagination. He has no business being on his roster, but he is because of injuries due to Cade Povich, and obviously the well-documented ones to Bradish and Grace Rodriguez alike. And then on top of the fact, when Mike Elias is, your GM, and him being just a complete clueless, moronic fool that he is, you're going to get Brandon Young on your 40-man and within your starting rotation when you're in the business of at least, we thought, trying to win baseball games and make a postseason push and what we thought was going to be a World Series championship contending year. But when you don't pitch, it is what it is. And Tomoyuki Sugano, who has been completely abysmal for the Orioles since the calendar flipped to June, he gets the ball in game 2 on Wednesday against the Mets, but he has left a lot to be desired. I mean, when 4 2/3 gave up 10 hits, 6 runs, 2 homers. Sugano pitches to contact. He does not pitch to strikeout. So when you miss on your location and your command is abysmal and you leave a lot of cutters hanging middle, you're liable to get smacked all around the yard in a given night. In his last 7 starts, he's got an ERA of 6.75, 34 2/3 innings pitched. He's given up 53 hits, 26 earned runs. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, but which is the yin and the yang of pitching to contact. You don't pitch to strikeout, therefore you don't typically walk a lot of guys because you're pitching the and with your delivery to put the ball in play, which leaves you susceptible to a lot of hard contact and giving up a lot of base hits. And when you're missing your spots, you give up those base hits and you give up those runs in bulk. He's got to find a way to lock in and strap in against the Mets this week. We'll get to that with Jason as we get a little bit deeper into the show. But hey, I mean, they had no business losing. When you play them back-to-back weeks, once in your place and then the other time in their place, you can't lose back-to-back series against the Texas Rangers. I'm sorry, you just can't. And had they been able to win both of those series, at least one against the Texas Rangers, and not blow that game in New York that Sunday afternoon to the Yankees, they'd be about maybe 5.5 games back of the 6th seed instead of 7.5 games back. But they finally got under the sub 500. They finally passed and cleared that 10 games under 500 benchmark. They are now in the single digits in terms of being under 500 for the first time in about 2 months and some change. So you get to 10 games under. You cleared that. Now you're at 9. Now the goal should be to get to 5. And then once you get to 5, break even and then go from there. But it's not going to be easy. Their toughest task, their last tough task before the break, these 3 games against the New York Mets team, which by my luck has learned, I should say, how to play championship winning baseball again as they come to town for 3 and then they get a layup, at least one would figure, against the Miami Marlins at home this upcoming weekend before they hit the break and then hit the road to take on Tampa yet again. And then 4 against the Cleveland Guardians team, which cannot get out of their own way. They can't hit. They got absolutely dominated by the Chicago Cub pitching when they went to Wrigleyville last week. They have lost 10 games in a row. They're 8 games under 500 with a negative 59 run difference. This is not the same team that the Orioles saw that was whacking their starting pitching something terrible all over Oriole Park and Camden Yards when they first came to Camden in mid-April back in the spring. So that's who they have looking ahead after the All-Star break in about 2 weeks' time. On the other baseball I want to get to, the Astros sweep the Dodgers. They're for real again, as per damn usual. What else is new? The Houston Astros this weekend at Dodger Stadium outscored the Dodgers. Get you the stat here in a minute. They outscored the Dodgers 29-6 in their sweep. The Dodgers with a lot of uncharacteristic last place Yankee-esque mistakes. Betts ran into and out on Saturday night, which I did not like a lot. And they did a lot of fundamentally things wrong in that series against the Astros, on top of the fact that just got whacked all over the ballpark. All Christian Walker does when he plays in Dodger Stadium is hit the ball out of the ballpark. The Dodgers are we know the Dodgers are for real. They just ran into a little bit of a rough patch against Houston. But I tell you something right now, the Houston Astros, I mean, they never left. They're 55 and 35, 20 games over 500, have won 8 out of their last 10. Groundhog's Day. Yankees stink, and the Houston Astros are making the American League, outside of the Detroit Tigers, are making the American League out to be their personal playpen, as per usual. They are now still got, they're a slightly above average team on the road. They're only 23 and 21 away from Minute Maid, but they've been a sensational home team this year, 32 and 14 at home. Only the Toronto Blue Jays have the same amount of wins. They play 2 more home games, so they have the 16 losses, but only the Toronto Blue Jays have the same amount of wins, if not more, than the Houston Astros do at home within the American League this year. The Detroit Tigers had the same amount of losses as the Houston Astros do at home at 14, but have played 2 less home games. They have only 30 wins, not 32. But still, the Houston Astros, and this is with a new cast of characters, with Altuve playing in the outfield, and they're still finding a way to get the damn job done. I tell you, that you want to talk about a team that I couldn't stand, and now I've grown to just flat out respect up and down. That's the Houston Astros. Their resourcefulness and their ability to just put together great season after great season after great season deserves to be commended. Just straight up and down salute to ownership. The manager has done a phenomenal job. Altuve, who has been the face of their franchise for well over a decade, is still able to get it done and produce and rake and just be the team's MVP. In the aftermath of seeing his former cohorts and championship mates, and Springer, who's obviously, like we mentioned, raking with the Blue Jays, seeing him go, seeing Correa go, this past offseason, seeing Kyle Tucker, who's having a sensational season with the Chicago Cubs, go, who's due for a big payday this upcoming offseason at the conclusion of this year, and obviously Alex Bregman, who's a Red Sox, and it just doesn't faze Jose Altuve. Does not faze them. The Houston Astros are just, they're forced to be reckoned with. And it sucks to say, you can pencil in the ALCS right now. You can pencil it in. Altuve 2 for 4 yesterday. He's hitting 272 on the season with an OPS of 789. He's hitting 393 in his last 7 games. It looks like it's you're going to get a Astros and Tigers ALCS. It's a shame that we're sitting here on July the 7th and we already know essentially who the 2 best teams in the American League are. And you get to fin at the rest of the summer. It's just going to be fodder for who's going to fill in the empty spaces within the playoff picture. But without a shadow of a doubt, 2 best teams, Astros and Tigers. The old guard against the young Bucks looking to make a statement in the aftermath of knocking out Houston in the American League wildcard series last October. Remember, if you guys remember correctly, so the Astros are saying, "Hey, we're still here," and the Detroit Tigers, the BMOC, the big men on campus, are saying, "Nah, it's my time. Look at me. I am the captain now. Future is now old, man. This is our American League to dominate, not yours." I tell you, best of 7 Astros and Tigers appointment television coming up later on this fall. And I saw some commentary because, and shout out to Clayton Kershaw getting his 3,000th strikeout, part of a very short list throughout the 156-year history of Major League Baseball to reach such an accomplishment. The idea he's the greatest pitcher in the history, the greatest starting pitcher in the history of the sport is just utter. I can't call somebody what you say it's unfair. I don't give a shit. You're a starting pitcher. It's no different than when you're a quarterback in the National Football League. I can't call you the greatest ever on a very short list of one of the greatest ever if your resume come playoff time is a complete 180 from what I see in the regular season. I'm sorry. Clayton Kershaw's postseason resume is piss poor for me to include him in a serious and for me to engage in a serious conversation regarding he being one of the greatest starting in terms of him being the greatest. I mean, we're talking Koufax, Smoltz. I mean, this is Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver. I mean, come on. The greatest in the history of the sport with his piss poor postseason resume. And you can't, like with Judge, you can't sit up and say he hadn't had chances. He's had plenty of chances. All this guy has done is pitched in the postseason. Whether it's with Matt Kemp and those teams under Mattingly in the 2010s, in the early to mid 2010s, through the late 2010s and into the 2020s with this crew now with Dave Roberts and them. No excuses. This guy has had more postseason disaster classes you can he makes Aaron Judge and Lamar Jackson shake their head in shame. Can we not we can give a guy his flowers, we can give this guy his well-deserved praise and accolades without going over the top. The sensationalism, it's gotta stop. Greatest pitcher. Have you looked at Clayton Kershaw's postseason ERA? It's not pretty. Not saying he's not a Hall of Famer. Not saying he's not top 20, top 25, top 30 all-time greatest at what he does. But the greatest ever? He's not even the greatest Dodgers starting pitcher ever. And I'm sorry. You're a starting pitcher in baseball. Same goes when you're a quarterback in the NFL. Your resume matters just as much, if not more, in the playoffs as it does in the regular season. The strong regular season resume is great, but are you willing to copy it and elevate your level of play to help deliver your team a championship or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, or in Brady's case, 7, when legacies and seasons on the line in postseason play? And Clayton Kershaw, numerous amounts of times, have hung very, very good Dodger teams out to dry with his pathetic postseason performances. He's got to take some accountability for that. He has to. You can't wash it away just because he's got 3,000 strikeouts. I'm sorry. Just if Clayton Kershaw had showed up in half of his poor postseasons, who knows how many rings he and the Dodgers would have to boot. In a large part, and rightfully so, we criticized Dave Roberts for years, up until essentially last year, really. We criticized him for years. The other variable as to why the Dodgers failed so egregiously in the postseason, and I'm just talking about under Dave Roberts' watch. I'm not even going to discuss when he was absolutely pathetic and was a batting practice machine in that NLDS against the Cardinals 11 years ago. I'm just talking about in the Dave Roberts era. He's the other variable to their postseason failures, too. Let us not forget. And don't sit up here and give me the garbage. Well, give me the game 5 against the Astros in 2017. That was one game in one series against one team. This guy has crapped his pants against the Cardinals, against the Nationals, against the Diamondbacks. Please, save it. Save it. 2 baseball deaths I want to acknowledge. This one that came down a little bit more recently. On Friday, on the 4th of July, Bobby Jenks passed away at the age of 44 due to complications regarding stomach cancer. He, 2-time All-Star, 2005 World Series championship reliever for the Chicago White Sox, career ERA of 3.53. In that season, he pitched to a 2.75 ERA in 32 appearances, 39 and third innings pitched, struck out 50 batters, surrendered only 12 earned runs on 34 hits that year. Had a sensational postseason for the White Sox that fall. 2.25 ERA, in 8 innings worth of work, 4 saves, 8 strikeouts, 2 earned runs on 4 hits. Was absolutely magnificent for that 05 White Sox team. He also played for the Boston Red Sox. He was a part of that 2011 Red Sox team that blew that wild card lead in September that year and lost the final game of that regular season to my Orioles and allowed the Tampa Bay Rays to make it in their place, but played for the White Sox from 05 to 2010. From Mission Hills, California, born March 14th, 1981, drafted by the Angels in the 5th round of the amateur draft out of Inglemoor High School in Kenmore, Washington. Made his major league debut 20 years ago yesterday on Sunday, July 2005, age of 24. That was against the Tampa Bay Rays. Innings worth of work, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk, no earned runs or hits surrendered. Obviously, outpouring of love from his former teammates, AJ Przinsky, among it's very, 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 very sad story. Dealt with stomach cancer, I guess, for quite a while. It's sad. 44 years of age, young man. Here's an article from the New York Times. This is a piece that they did on Bobby back on April 15th. For his 44th birthday just 1 month ago, Bobby Jenks asked his family to buy him a tent. It was a gift he knew he couldn't use, not right now. It was more of what it represented. Someday when his body allows, he wants to take his family on a road trip through Europe, stopping to camp along the way. He lives in Portugal, which is where he died on Friday. And he had his family home got burnt, actually, back in January, back on January 7th. His family home in California burned during those wildfires back in the winter. You guys remember. And every memento of his baseball career burned. His first game ball, his first win, first strikeout save, all of that gone. And then he learned later on that month that he was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. Father-in-law says, I'll never forget the sadness in his eyes when his doctor said that to him. No longer has his home, his worldly possessions, his life savings, or his health. He had to sign baseballs to pay for medical treatments. Family dropped their health insurance years ago because it was expensive and did not have health concerns. And just being myself and living a normal life again, that's my motivation. He said, having the strength to do my daily activities, to run around with my kids. Told his doctors to not schedule any appointments for him until early July. For all bad things that had befallen to him, he wanted to get to Chicago to celebrate, obviously, the 20th anniversary of that championship team with his teammates. Heart goes out to his wife, his 2 kids, his in-laws, his former teammates, manager. Sad story. Very, very sad story. And another passing that took place about a week or so before was the great Dave Parker that passed away. And his is sad. Or just as heartbreaking because he obviously is getting inducted into Cooperstown this month and only had about a few weeks left to go until his induction, a month at around the time of his passing. He obviously 7-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, was on the 89 Oakland A's team, was on the 79 We Are Family Pirates team. Obviously, his first 10 years in the big leagues was as a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates from 73 to 1983. Born in Grenada, Mississippi, June 9th, 1951. Career hitter of 290, 2,712 hits, 339 home runs, batting average drove in 1,493 RBIs. Nicknamed the Cobra. Just obviously solid defensive outfielder. 3 straight gold gloves. Threw out 72 runners, and including 26 alone in 1977. Hall of Fame career. died of Parkinson's disease at the age of 74, something he had been living with for the better part of the last 12 years since 2013. Owned several Popeyes chicken franchises in Cincinnati before he had to sell them when he got sick. Just sad. So, rest in peace, Dave Parker and Bobby Jenks. Jason Azario, JAYREELZ Podcast coming up.
Joining me now on the JAYREELZ podcast, we have not had him on in a long time, and he is in a great mood in terms of the sports teams with his New York Metropolitans getting back on the winning track. We discussed earlier in the show, took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees at Citi Field this weekend, and his team's on their way down south to play my ball club this week as the Orioles return home from Atlanta, sweeping his arch nemesis Atlanta Braves. The one and only Jason Azario, host of the JAYREELZ Podcast, joins us. Jason, nice to have you back on the show, my good brother. How you been? What is going on?
Yes, sir. It's an honor to be on yet again. I know it's been some time, but always good to be here. And yes, everything is good. I cannot complain. It's summertime. It's my time of year. I love it when it's warm, when it's hot. And yes, I understand baseball is the only thing that's really cooking, but that's all right. At least we got that going on before we get deeper into the summer. And then obviously when the fall comes, that's when everything goes haywire.
That's exactly right. Everything goes haywire. Well, for the listeners and the viewers that haven't heard from you in a long time, just hear an update. How's your show doing? Any new things going on with that? As Rizzo likes to say, I has the family. Give me a couple of minutes there on that, because he doesn't look it, folks. He looks every bit about like 35 years of age, but Jason is a grandfather. So he's got to take care of the grandkids and keep tabs on them and love and dote on them like all good grandparents do. So just to hear an update on how life for Jason Azario has been the last handful of years.
Yes, no, I appreciate that, Jai. Well, for starters, it's interesting that you talked about my 4th of July weekend prior to recording, and I actually spent time with my grandson yesterday, who's here from Tampa. He's 10 years old, so we got to reconnect a little bit. He's here till this coming Sunday. He's spending time with his aunt, so I'll meet up with him later on in the week again before he heads back to Florida. But as far as yours truly, yes, lots of cooking going on as an independent, full-time, you want to call it podcaster, content creator, etc., with the 2 podcasts a week, Monday and Thursdays. Of course, on all the particulars, Apple, Spotify, YouTube channels at JAYREELZ, JAYREELZ. I don't know if you can tell by the hat for those watching live. Well, not live, but for those who are watching on wherever I'm sure you're on your YouTube channel or wherever else.
YouTube.
And I do a Wednesday live stream at 12 p.m. on YouTube. I've also started doing some commentary videos because I've seen a lot that's gone on throughout the landscape as I'm trying to pick and choose certain channels that I watch and just try to not necessarily pick from them, but to say, how can I incorporate that to what it is that I'm doing? I also started critiquing videos, which is a little bit dicey because as I like to watch other people's videos, and if something is just too clickbaity or just out of left field, I got to call it out, as I did with the one I put out on Saturday with this one particular creator. I don't know if you're familiar. I'll throw her name out. Ashley Novell. Does that name ring a bell?
No, it does not.
No. Oh, really? All right. No, but I got to give it up. And everything that I talk about is strictly business, nothing personal. She does a lot of NBA, NFL stuff, but she's had like Shaq on her show, and she's doing everything independently. And I understand she's worked in different outlets, but yeah, I had to call her out on a couple of things regarding Damian Lillard. So I'm sure people are probably like, ooh, what does he have in for her to start critiquing? Well, anyway, I'm experimenting with that. So yeah, I got a lot cooking, a lot going on. And just grateful, thankful to be in the position I am. But of course, with that being said, before we pivot, being that independent and not having a steady income, that becomes a little tricky. So I'm trying to work that in the mix on top of all that. But otherwise, everything is good, fine and dandy. I cannot complain.
That's perfect. So let's jump right into it with your New York Metropolitans. I picked them preseason to go to the World Series. I believe I also had them winning, and if I'm not mistaken, but I know off the top of my head, let me double check. Yeah, I did. Mets win the World Series over the Rangers in 7 was my preseason prediction back in March. And they started out the season on the right foot. The starting pitching punched above their weight. Carlos Mendoza was hitting all the right buttons. Bullpen was fine. Pete Alonso got off to an amazing start to the year. I said this on last Monday, and I said, because you know how crazy I am about the Orioles, and I've been ripping them to shreds all season long. And I remember in preparations for one of the shows I did back in May, I had somebody tweeted out the list, best to worst of batting average with runners in scoring position. And this is when the Mets were like, they couldn't lose a game. But you look down, listen, you saw the Mets were among the bottom third in all of baseball at the time. And this is like early, mid-May, bottom third in all of baseball at the time, and hitting with runners in scoring position. And lo and behold, starting pitching comes back down to earth, a little bit banged up with the injuries, Phil Senga, this, that, and the third. And what the Mets were able to win in spite of in May and April was one of the primary reasons why they lost so many games in the month of June. Your 2 cents on your Mets heading into the season, your expectations, getting Soto, obviously, that's the big kicker. And then obviously the slump that they're just starting to work their way out of.
Well, I picked the Mets prior to the start of the year to make it the wild card and get to the divisional series and lose in that round, because I was not sold on their pitching. And I understand Jeremy Hefner, the pitching coach of the Mets, worked wonders last year with the likes of Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, who may start this week. We'll see. I don't know if he's going to start toward the end of the week, whether down there in Baltimore or even in Kansas City before the All-Star break. Also, Jose Quintana. So when he worked magic with those guys, I said, geez, I couldn't believe what the Mets did last year. And to expect a repeat performance without Severino and Quintana, I thought to myself, yeah, they may mash the ball and they'll probably have their moments with their pitching staff throughout the year, but I was not expecting a carbon copy to the point where they would get back to, let's say, even the NLCS, let alone a Game 6 as they did last year. And as we've seen so far this year, I'll start pitching and I'll go to the Mets and overall real quick. The pitching right now has been their Achilles heel based on so many of their guys in the rotation who have been out. Kodai Senga is the one, of course, you mentioned. We're still waiting on Manaea to come back. Frankie Montas came back and actually was decent against the Yankees on Saturday. Shocker there, because I don't expect much out of him. But the bullpen is literally tattered in shambles, and they had to use an opener in the game yesterday because of a day-night doubleheader on Wednesday. So when you're bringing in retreads, although he pitched well in the first 2 innings, like Chris Davinsky and Zach Pop and Brandon Waddle, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, especially when you're going up against the Yankee team that have been mashing the ball the whole weekend, despite them losing the first 2 games of the Subway Series and then obviously snapping their 6-game losing streak and winning yesterday. So they're pitching. I get it that the trade deadline's at the end of the month. I'm sure David Stearns is going to work the phone lines to see who he's going to bring in. I do not want to give up any of our big players, whether it be the Ronnie Mauricios of the world or the Brandon Sproat, who is our big-time pitching prospect down in the minors. So, I mean, unless they're getting somebody, a big quality stud back, then obviously I'm open to it. But if you're going to bring back a third starter or a guy who's a rental and give up half the farm for that, I'm not doing that if I'm David Stearns. So that's the pitching. And as far as the lineup goes, I'm not hell-bent on a lot of these people with Soto. His average is down to 260s, and I get it. He's not supposed to be a 260 hitter. He's supposed to be anywhere between 280 and, let's say, 310. But his power numbers are still pretty good. And I understand $765 million and $51 million annually from now until the end of time. But he's been great since the start of June. I mean, he was the player of the month in the National League. Had a home run there on Friday to set the stage for what happened there for the weekend, or at least in that game against the Yankees. And I'm not worried about him. The one thing that I do worry about with this Met lineup is its length. Now, we know the top is fine with Lindor, Soto, even Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso as well, as you mentioned the start that he had. But it's the bottom of the lineup, and I get it. A lot of people in baseball do not have a good 6 through 9, but it falls off big time after that. The Luis Torrens of the world and the Tyrone Taylors, no offense. But it's a situation where you get past that first 4 or 5 guys in a lineup, then it's almost like a black hole. And you can't expect them to pull any of the weight, especially in the postseason, because let's just say Alonso in a game 4 in the NLDS and he's 1 for 12. You can't expect the Tyrone Taylors, or even when he comes back, you figure once he gets brought up, whether it is Francisco Alvarez or even if it is Luis Torrens, guys like that you know that they're going to be automatic outs come October. So how I look at it is that although they've been matching the ball here as of late, which is good. But we all know ebbs and flows. Those guys are going to get cold at the top of the order or even in the middle of the order, and then the pitching will probably be well, and then it'll go vice versa. But this Mets team on a whole, how I look at it is that I think they'll be in the running for the division because the Phillies, it's not as if they run away and hide, and they're playing hot potato because in the middle of the May, the Mets had a 4.5-game lead, and then they gave it right back to where the Phillies had I think it was a 4-game lead in the early part of June, and then they gave it back to the Mets, and it's been back and forth. So I think the Mets are going to make the postseason. I think it's fine, but to me, it's going to boil down to their pitching, and of course, their staff leads the entire league in baseball in walks. So that killed them in the Dodgers series last year in the NLCS. So they're going to have to do something about that. And in order for them to try to bring any reinforcements for them to get deeper into October, obviously it's all about their pitching.
Pitching, and how would you grade what part of your pitching you think do you hold out the most hope to get fixed sooner? The bullpen or your rotation?
I'd probably say the bullpen, and it's tough because some guy, with the Mets bringing in guys like Zach Pop, and I hate to call him this because I tease him on my podcast. I call him Dirk Diggler, but AKA Dickie Lovelady. I mean, the guy has a name that's built for adult films. So the lefty, and he's a guy that obviously they brought him up and then they sent him back and then they brought him back up again. And it's just been a disaster. John, I might as well have you and I come out of the bullpen. I mean, that's how bad it is. And to me, if you're going to get a quick fix, I believe that's the way to go because starting pitching, it's going to be at a premium. Now, I get it. You don't have to get a top-of-the-line starter. You could try to get maybe a 2 or at least a solid 3. But even then, I'm sure some of these lesser teams, they're going to ask for the sun, moon, and stars, and I'm not willing to part with those guys. It's not as if the Tarek Skubal is not him per se, but talent like that is not going to be there after the All-Star break to be had as far as to bring onto your team to get a nice stretch here for the rest of the summer and into October. So to me, I think it's going to be the bullpen because the way these games are played, especially in October, starters are going to go 5, top 6 innings, and then it's going to be handed to the bullpen. So to me, I think that they're going to need a significant upgrade there in order for them to have any sustainability going on for the rest of this year and obviously into the postseason.
How would you grade the performance of your manager, Carlos Mendoza, this far?
I give him a solid B. And the only reason why I say that is because I could go in 100 different directions with this. I give him a solid B for this reason. I'll give one specific. Obviously, he's a guy that everybody likes. And as we all know, the manager in this day and age, it's all about, I don't want to say being buddy-buddy or being chums, but it's just taking the landscape of the 26 individuals and egos in the locker room. And it seems like he has a good pulse of that. But my problem with Mendoza is that he's worn the bullpen out then. And I get it that these games are pretty much forecasted 3 hours prior to the start time of these games because they try to figure it out in essence at 4 o'clock as opposed to between 7 and 10 p.m. And it's a thing where, unfortunately, as a fan, it becomes increasingly frustrating knowing that they don't have the bullpen pieces, knowing that he has a guy like Clay Holmes that in the 5th inning, that game against the Rays where 5 innings, he gave up 1 run, and he's pulling him with 79 pitches. What are we doing here? What, because you're afraid of the third time around the lineup? I mean, come on. That's a terrible job. And as it was, they brought in, who did they bring in that night to relief? His name's eluding me right now. It'll come to me. But they gave him 5. Paul Blackburn. How can I forget it? A.K.A. Heartburn. Came in, and he gave him 5 runs, and they lose to the Rays, and they got swept that weekend. So instead of the immortal words of Todd Zeal, who does the SNY, the Met Network, the pre- and post-game, he says, instead of using the eye test, they go to the iPad. And it's frustrating because instead of putting Holmes out there for a 6th inning and have him battle it, go through a 6th inning, or even if the first sign of trouble, they're ready to hook him. So that's the problem I have with Mendoza in that regard. But I get it's not just him, it's everybody in baseball. But that's the one drawback that I have because he's just so quick to go to this bullpen. And I get it. He doesn't have a staff like a few years ago with the Jacob deGroms or even Max Scherzer, for that matter. You want to go even further back with Matt Harvey and Noah Syndergaard. I understand. But at the same time, I think he's just so reliant on this bullpen. But there's nothing but it's bare. Edwin Diaz is the only guy. Ryan Stanek, who I like, but he throws 100 miles an hour, but it's straight. he's not blowing people away, even with 100 miles an hour on the gun. So if that's the one thing I have with Mendoza, it's that. For whatever reason, he's just quick to go to that bullpen instead of having his starters go at least into the sixth or even further for that.
Gotcha. It's interesting because, and it's ironic because the Mets, I mean, you guys had that series out in LA back in May, if I'm not mistaken. You guys played fairly well there. And I'm sitting there watching, and that was around the same time where the Dodgers, just injury after. I mean, they got the highest payroll in the sport, and the injury bug never escapes them, especially with their pitching. No. And I was like, the Mets are just, I mean, I understand the Dodgers, Ohtani and Freeman. I get all the superstars, but it's like when you have to win those nitty-gritty games. I said at the time, I said, give me the Mets before you give me the Dodgers, as it stood right then and there. As of now, I mean, I still think for my money, I understand Zach Wheeler, and he was phenomenal for the Phillies yesterday. Who knows on Bryce Harper with the health of him and that lineup, Castellanos and Schwarber, they can get very, even Trey Turner to a certain extent, they can get very streaky. So I still would take the Mets to be the quote unquote second fiddle to knock off the Dodgers in the National League as it stands right now. What did you think about? Because I got off of work on Wednesday last week, and I saw the game, the final game you guys played against the Brewers, and Pete Alonso got hit by a pitch. And I tweeted out, I said, when are the Mets going to, and this is an opinion that I heard Don LaGreca, who's also a Met fan of ESPN Radio New York, he said this about 2 years ago, and he was I think it was about last year, 24 or in 23. He made the point, the Mets for the longest time have led the universe in getting hit by the pitch. And it's just from an outsider's perspective and just as a neutral baseball fan, I miss, and it's funny because before the season started, I watched that Netflix docuseries on the 04 Red Sox, and hearing the comments of seeing the attitudes of the players with those brawls they got into with the Yankees in July of that year, and then hearing like the current commentary from Millar and Varitek and all those, it's like there's a certain attitude that those guys carried. And the Mets are too good of a baseball team. They got too much talent. They're on the field in between the white lines for the last 2 years. They have not been pushovers by any stretch of the imagination. But it's like whenever they get hit, it's like, do they got too many buddies on other? Why don't the Mets? I mean, you're old enough to remember 1986. Mets couldn't get into enough fights. So it's like where is like that level? Where is that intangible of that toughness where the Mets refuse to get punked, and where's just that situation where Alonso or somebody wears one and they say, "Damn it, you know what? I had a rough morning. I'm not really in the best of moods. Let's go and duke it out like they did back in the day." Like why doesn't your team do that? They didn't really do that under Buck. And they don't do that under Mendoza. Why? Where is that level of extra and sort of like that? Who is that badass on the team that's unafraid to engage, not afraid to engage in fisticuffs? Why doesn't that exist with the team?
Yeah, I think that's across all sports too, and that's a whole other thing to unpack, which I don't know if you want to get into, because I truly feel like that, whether it's the NBA, even the NFL to a certain extent, that the player of today is a lot different from the player of yesteryear. And I'm not trying to compare errors or anything like that, but when you see, just like you mentioned, the 86 Mets as opposed to the Mets today, and I'll never forget, a couple of years ago, right out of the gate, it seemed like every other day there was a Met getting hit in the batter's box, and they didn't do anything about it. And this was, as a matter of fact, this was in 2023, the year after they lost to San Diego in the wild card round, where they just got hit left and right. And Buck, it may have been 22, though. It may have been the start of that year. But, yeah, Buck, all you do is you see him in the dugout with that steely gaze, and, You could tell that he's frustrated or just aggravated that his players getting plunked. But, right, there isn't a guy on the Met team now that's going to go out there, either charge the mound or, let's say, point the bat at the pitcher and say, hey, that was up and in. Next one, I'm coming to charge the mound. And I think there isn't anything wrong with that. And I don't know, call me old school, whatever. Not that I want bench clearing balls every 5 seconds. But there's not enough attitude in any of these sports in this day and age. And it's unfortunate. And just sticking with baseball, I think unless there are not many hotheads, maybe have a couple of pitchers that they'll throw up and in, and, yeah, they'll stand on the mound and say, yeah, what are you going to do about it? But to me, it's just the makeup of the ball player in this day and age that they're just not going to do that. They're not going to go up there. Or let's say, for instance, over the weekend, Pete Alonso hit a couple of home runs against the Yankees, and let's say in the Saturday game, it was 8-5, hit a 3-run homer to pretty much ice the game. And you would think maybe whomever was pitching, and that was a young pitcher that was on the mound, so he wasn't going to throw. I think his name was Javian Sandridge, a lefty. Right, you would think the next pitch is going to be in that player's back, which would, of course, precipitate a brawl. Obviously, that pitcher isn't going to do that. His first major league appearance, so he's not going to stir the pot there. But again, I think it goes back to the player today not having that attitude or even not having the onions, to say it nicely, to say, no, I'm on the mound, I'm going to throw in, so be it. Or the guy in the batter's box to say, hey, if the next one is going to be in my back, I'm coming after you on the mound. And I understand. They don't want to make it WWE. They don't want it to be a situation where, it's going to get out of control, where Rob Manfred's going to have to get involved. But still, I think a little bit of attitude and a little bit of just, I don't want to go as far as saying showmanship, but I think there is too much fraternization. I think it's a thing where players are just so buddy-buddy, and especially with baseball, because when you talk about the players and then obviously with the owners and how much of there's a chasm between both. So therefore, it's almost like, hey, we got to stick together. It can't be a thing where, I'm going to charge the mound, or you know what, I'm going to, stare at you after hitting a home run or whatever it is. So, yeah, it's weird. I guess I could just chalk it up to today's player being a far cry from the player 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, and it's one thing that because I was born in 2002, so a lot of today's athletes today are the younger millennial and obviously the Gen Z. And you're right, it certainly is a generational thing. But even I know I am not your average Gen Zer, but it's like, I don't know, it's just something about being a grown man with like an ounce of pride. It's like even if it's in the arena of competition, like you're not going to willingly go out of your way to try to punk me and me not have anything to do or say about it. I'm sorry. Again, we're not looking for, fights breaking every 5 seconds like it's hockey, but I do miss the old school. You gotta beef. Let's drop the bats, drop the gloves, and let's go at it. That's one of the reasons why 2 years ago, why people were so enamored with the Jose Ramirez and Tim Anderson fight. Because you had a discrepancy at second base over a slide when Ramirez hit a double. Words were said that somebody said they had enough, and it said, "All right, let's just settle this the old-fashioned way." Like they're with baseball, because it's been in the game prior to this generation consistently for so long. It's like you appreciate the novelty sometimes of like a real actual fight, not the John of the back and forth and the homie back bro and I've seen it twice in like the last 5 baseball games winning. I saw it last July when my idiot then manager incited something out of nothing when Heston Kjerstad got kicked in the face Clay Holmes hit him in the face with 99 up at his dome and nothing happened. And it was just a bunch of shouting and pushing and shoving. And then I was at the White Sox-Orioles game on the 30th of May, about a month and a few weeks ago. Kobe Mayo, got shoved, got caught in a rundown, got up, said something, showed a little bravado, but nothing happened. And I'm standing there above the bullpen area, the Stan Ramone area, and I see the White Sox and Orioles bullpens with cavalry charge coming down the outfield. So it's just like, I miss that. And it's not like that the Mets are short of any physically imposing guys. Pete Alonso's a big man. Juan Soto's a big man. So it's
Yeah.
I don't understand what disconnect is. Now, sometimes in order to make people respect you, you have to take matters into your own hands and kind of go above and beyond, and that doesn't necessarily always mean winning baseball games.
Right. No, and I totally agree with you, Jai, because unlike yesteryear, and right, I don't want to sound like the old man get off my lawn, because that 86 Met team, I was 17. I remember watching all those brawls, and they were all, from what I remember, they were all classic. I mean, the third base, Ray Knight, when Eric Davis slides into third and then Ray Knight punches him, and then the next thing you know, Kevin Mitchell's getting kicked in his ribs because he's beating up on Mario Soto, and he had 3 other guys on top of him. And also that year, you had Darryl getting plunked, and it was Tom Niedenfuhr hitting Ray Knight after Strawberry hit a home run. I mean, it was just nonstop. And then, of course, when they played the Astros, they got arrested in a nightclub. Now, I understand this is off the field, but then you had the Astro fans calling them pond scum, and the rivalry they had with the Cardinals and Whitey Herzog. I mean, yeah, it was obviously a different, not necessarily brand of baseball, but it was a bunch of different characters, and everybody hated the Mets because the Mets had all the star players, but they had obviously star borderline Hall of Fame players, whether it's Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, who's in the Hall of Fame, Darryl, etc. So in this day and age, granted, like you mentioned, Alonso, Soto, you could go down the list of maybe even some of the other role players that you think that would step up if anything were to happen. Maybe they feel like, oh, well, I'm not the leader of this team, so I'm not going to try to overstep my boundaries. Who knows what it is? But the thing is, at the end of the day, is having that type of baseball, I think it's good for the game. And right, just like you said, we don't want this to be a bean brawl every 5 seconds. But yeah, to have that attitude to say, hey, I'm not going to get pushed around on the field, or maybe they're worried about getting suspended. I mean, it shouldn't even come to that. But yeah, it's just a shame that baseball does not have that flair, does not have that oomph that you said, because to me, I think that would actually elevate the sport a little bit to the point where it's like, if you're throwing up and in on this guy, who knows what could happen here? Or even if it's the batter who hit 2 home runs, now granted that starting pitcher's probably going to be out of the game, but let's just say third time around, if that guy is still on the mound, he may plunk him to start an inning. And you don't see that anymore. Unfortunately, it's just not the same game in that regard.
And not only does it, to your point, not only is it good for the game in terms of like for us as fans and the marketing thing and everything, but it's also good for the team itself because it builds that level of camaraderie, band of brothers. I got your back, you have mine. And it's not funny, but one of the primary reasons why I brought it up is because when the Mets went on that long skid a few weeks ago, a lot of Met fans I see on Twitter, media alike, was calling out this team's lack of mental toughness. And sometimes if you get into a situation where it's 26 versus 26, kicking each other's ass, raging mad, it builds a level of obviously physical toughness on the outside, but mental toughness on the inside. Because you say to yourselves and you say to your band of brothers in the same uniform, damn it, we are not going to allow ourselves to get punked by X, Y, and Z. And that sometimes that sort of mental capacity within your, mental Rolodex comes in handy when in between the white lines, you've lost 6 out of your last 8 games. You can't hit, and your bullpen is running on fumes, and you have no starting pitching to speak of. Because with professional sports, they play into each other hand in hand in that sort of regard. But that's an observation I've had about the team for a good little bit.
No, and that's fair, and I like that. And again, it's a thing where the Mets, they stumbled here. Now, granted, they just finished winning 4 in a row, modest, before losing yesterday. And prior to that, it was just been god-awful. But you would think that there should be a guy, whomever that may be, whether it is Pete Alonso, maybe even a guy like Brandon Nimmo, who I know is not that guy. He's the longest tenured Met. But, how about somebody going in there and breaking a bat over a cooler? How about somebody going in there and not necessarily tossing the buffet table, but – and a quick case in point, I got actually 2 examples. So one to piggyback off of what we've been talking about real quick. When they went to Pittsburgh last week and they lost the first 2 games, they got just beat up, 9-1 and 9-2. And it was a thing where they had a players-only meeting. Like, what was going on in that meeting? Now, nobody knows because the media tried to press, and, of course, it was under wraps between the players on the team. They didn't really expound on what was said during this meeting. But then what happened? They go out in the final game of that series against the Pirates and they lose 12-1. So how I looked at it was, it's like they probably said, guys, this is what we're going to do. We play like crap here in Pittsburgh these 2 games. We've already lost 4 in a row. Actually 6 in a row at that point. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take tomorrow off because we have a day off on Monday, and then we'll come back on Tuesday to play the Brewers because that's how they played on Sunday. So there was no urgency. There was no one guy in the locker room that was just going to stir things up and say, hey, let's go. This is enough. We're better than this, etc. And you don't see that. And
it's not his nature.
So by him doing that, you expect that. So you're not going to kill Ohtani there. But again, could you imagine if Ohtani just stood there with his arms down and his back there and he just stood at the pitcher? That would have incited a riot, and that would have shown the baseball fan, even the sports fan, like, whoa, maybe Ohtani isn't the guy I want to mess with, as opposed to just being the peacemaker. I'll just go back to the dugout, which therefore just punctuate everything that we talked about here over the last, 10 minutes or so.
Absolutely. But even then, like the level when we talk about camaraderie, he got hit and the Dodgers was fitting to go at it for 30 minutes. Like he gets hit, you literally see the video of the legs going over like almost instantaneous.
Yep.
The Mets, it happens to their players and nobody says boo. My team, last year drove me crazy. Colton Cowser had to miss time because he it was either Cowser or Westberg. I think it was Westberg. Westberg gets hit in the wrist. Nothing in late July in a game against the Blue Jays when the Orioles were beating them up all up and down the yard for 3 days. Late July last year, he gets hit, breaks his wrist, is essentially out 2/3 of the final handful of time in the season. Nothing happens. They had to have Hyde literally make up an excuse to incite a bench clearing incident because nobody in Oriole Black and Orange did anything when Clay Holmes put 99 to Heston Kirsten's dome. So it's a very peculiar situation. Very peculiar. Speaking of Clay Holmes, he starts for your Mets coming up on Tuesday. This 3-game set, it's important for both teams. Obviously, like you said, with the Mets, currently as we stand right now at the time of this recording, a game and a half back of the Philadelphia Phillies, 52-39, looking to get back on the winning wagon. Like you said, won 4 in a row, had their winning streak snapped, failing to sweep the Yankees yesterday afternoon. Orioles need this game and need this series now uphill battle based on who we have pitching for us, but they need this in the worst way imaginable. They sweep the Atlanta Braves. They get to not to single digits under 500 for the first time, I think, since April, if I'm not mistaken. So only 9 games under 500. They got 6-game NL East homestand for the All-Star break, 3 against the Mets, 3 this weekend against New Orleans. You sweep those 2 series and you head into the All-Star break at only 3 games under at 46 and 49. Not going to be easy by any stretch of circumstances. My audience knows what I think about my team this year. Let the audience hear your 2 cents on what you've made about my 2025 Baltimore Orioles, then we'll get to the series and specifics.
Yeah, I have to say I'm wildly disappointed in your front office, which I understand. I'm preaching to the choir here when it comes to this. I mean, you would think you would build off of these last 2 years, winning a division 2 years ago, and then last year a wild card. And I understand you hadn't won a playoff game. All right, that's not good, but at least you've had some success. And then you have new ownership come in where you finally get rid of the stench of the Angelos and having to deal with that for the last 30-some-odd years. So now you have almost a clean slate to have your owner to now go out after these last 2 years to see who they could get as far as free agents are concerned. You know about the young offense that you have in that lineup. So now you want to keep, whether it be Corbin Burns, as we all know what happened there, but for them to not really do anything. I mean, Charlie Morton, what are we doing here? And it's a thing that this is a team that is built for not even just into the 2030s. This is also a team that's built for now because of these young players that we were hoping that would progress to the point where once you get to the latter part of this decade, they'll be ready to win. Now, as it was, you look at the last 2 years, I felt that they were ready to win. All right, granted, they maybe didn't have that one guy in the lineup, that veteran that you could say, all right, let's hang our head on this guy because he's the one we're going to have to listen to. We're going to have to follow his lead, et cetera. All right, they didn't have that guy. But that's what this past offseason would have been the opportunity for them to do so. Obviously, Gary Sanchez isn't cutting it as far as a guy that's going to be, all right, so what? He's been to several playoffs as a Yankee, but again, he has his own history in the postseason of not hustling, of not being able to catch a ball, and obviously striking out left and right in the playoffs. So how I look at it is that if the Orioles were going to have anything close to these last 2 years, they had to bring some veteran leadership and some reinforcements in there, and more so to bolster their rotation, because when Burns was gone, all right, you're going to bring Charlie Martin in as a last resort if you, let's say, brought in 2 other big-time pitchers, or let's say 2 number 2 pitchers and then Martin, all right, you can live with that. But if that's the big transaction of your offseason, you already knew going in that this could be a long season. And as it is, like you mentioned, you're now, 9 games under 500, and I understand that the wild card still may seem to be a distant memory only because you want to get to 500 in order to be considered serious when it comes to the wild card race. And how I look at it, too, is that because the American League is so bad, the Guardians have lost 10 in a row. The Royals have obviously not come close to what they've done last year. And the Angels, you figure at some point they're going to fall. So, listen, for them, just to be in the race, what are they, 2 games under 500, that is miraculous, because usually by now they're like 20 under. But as crazy as that may sound, and I don't think that the Orioles are going to be buyers here by the end of the month, but if they get on a roll, let's say they win 2 out of 3 against the Mets, and maybe you only want to win series. I understand sweeps sound great, etc., but let's say you start winning series, and who knows? You could get back into the thick of things, and you just take a chance from there. Because think about this, Jai. The last 2 years, division winner and a wild card, you didn't win. Watch this be the 1 year that somehow, some way, you sneak in through the back door. And then what happens? You end up winning a wild card round, and then you may be in a game 5 in a division series, which I'm sure right now you would probably sign for in your own blood.
I love Jason, man. He you know what he did? He did a phenomenal job at selling me why the Orioles will be worthwhile after the starting this week through the dog days and summer. He did a phenomenal job of selling me why I should still continue to believe. And I got to be honest, there is the twisted part of me that watches every game. I still watch every game, as you know, but there's a part of me that says, you know what? All they got to do is just this, catch fire, and then take off. I said, I was texting a buddy of mine the other day. I said, 70% of me is convinced that this is all just fodder, that they're not going to go anywhere. 75 and 87 written all over it, 4th place, last place, whatever the case might be. But there's a still strong 30% of me that says, you know what? Maybe they just got to catch fire at the right time. Maybe maybe for this team to actually mature and do something worthwhile for a change, they have to essentially, as Dog said when he talked about Rory finally winning the Masters. You know, sometimes to get the piano off your back, you kind of have to go to the depths of hell first before you can finally enjoy the riches of you coming out on top. So maybe that's the case. I don't think so, but Jason did a hell of a job on selling me that. Listen,
and I will say this one last thing. I understand you don't have Tarek Skubal, but maybe you could be the Tigers of this year. And I understand that's a long shot, but because you have the young players, and hopefully they can start to come together to the point where they can start hitting, because I understand you don't have starting pitching, but maybe, just maybe, if the Orioles are going to do something at the deadline, and they may think that, hey, by the time you get to the end of the month, if they're 5 back or 6 back in the wild card race, maybe they'll do something. Who knows? But obviously, we have to wait and see.
Yeah, I want to believe so bad.
But it's like,
I've been burned way too many times. But yeah, it's just it's been one of the more agonizing, more frustrating seasons I can never go. And I don't blame ownership. Dan has been on record numerous amounts of times saying money is no object. He basically has come in, kind of sort of reminded me how your owner, Steve Cohen, you know, he's there. He didn't buy the team at this point in stage and time in his life just to have it as a nice little ornament. You know, they want to expand their success portfolio. So he bought the team to win a championship. It's just the problem is that he's not a George Steinbrenner. He's a sports guy. He's a baseball guy, where if he doesn't see the results, he's going to be, you know, on the front office, on management, on the coaching staff's ass saying, why isn't this being done? Why are we in last place? Why are we 12, 13, 14, 15? So he's not wired he's not wired that way, which I understand different strokes for different folks. The onus, and I've said it all season long, even Dayton, I remember doing rants on the Orioles, and I remember the show that I did after Charlie Morton got signed. I think it was the Friday before the divisional playoffs in the NFL back in mid-January. I'm like, Corbin, so let me get this straight. You're like Corbin Burns walk, and you're bringing in Charlie Morton, who's in his fees, who's over the hill, that had an ERA over 4 for the Atlanta Braves last year, who they couldn't depend on when they had a bunch of injuries to their starting rotation last year. I mean, what? So I saw the forest through the trees. I saw this disaster coming a mile away, but I thought they were at least going to be clutch enough and mentally tough enough to win games in spite of it. So I said, what, like 85 and 87? I mean, you thought with their lineup and getting Batista back as your closer, cutting Craig Kimbrel's, says, hey, they can win. Their win total is going to be in the 80s. The American League's not going to be that good. You figure they would at least win 80-something games by default. Now, as it stands right now, I'd be more than happy to take 85, 86 wins right now.
Oh, yeah. And who knows? And it may get you in as the 16th AL wildcard race, or in the big body work.
Yeah, in the wildcard city, absolutely. Yep. What Orioles are you scared are going to? Obviously, Jesse Winker comes back. You can give me your 2 cents on him coming back for the Mets this week. But who are the Orioles within the lineup that you are nervous about going up against the Mets starting pitching, and even the bullpen for that matter, as the series embarks on Tuesday?
Yeah, I look at the top of the order there because it's weird. Now, I know the Orioles, obviously, they swept Atlanta, but I don't know which hitters have been hot as far as on your team. And the reason why I say hot is because whomever's cold right now, and because of the way the Met pitching is, although Clay Holmes obviously is going to start, who right now is the Mets' best pitcher, maybe he and Dave Peterson. But I can see that person getting hot because if you watched all weekend with the Yankee series, I mean, the starting rotation was not good at all. Even though Frankie Montas, I gave him some praise earlier, but still, 5 innings and still gave up 4 runs and 6 hits. Thankfully, the Mets scored 7 runs in the process. But the thing is that if I'm going to look at a hitter that I would be obviously worried about, and what is he batting now? Is he still batting in the 220s? Jackson Holiday? Because he's the guy that's going to be the table setter.
He's batting in about the 260s now. Went 4 for 4 yesterday.
Now. Look at that.
Had the 2-run home run in the top of the 3rd inning, which was the deciding factor in the games, hitting 260 on the season, OPS of 724, 11 home runs, 36 RBIs. He is hitting 288 in his last 15 games.
Because I remember in the Yankee series when they came to Yankee Stadium a few weeks ago, I believe it was maybe he was in the high 220s, and I was even surprised to see that number. So for him I think he's the one guy that I could see if he's going to get on base, and he's going to be the guy that's going to smack the ball over that ballpark. And he's the one guy that I would certainly keep my eye on because you want to keep him at. And even though, of course, you have a lot of dangerous hitters there. Now, Adley Rutschman is another guy. Isn't he still in the IL as of this moment?
Yeah,
he's come back
hurt.
by now?
He's still Yeah, we're down to our 5th, 6th string. I mean, we got Jacob Stallings catching games for us, and some random that we acquired from the Yankees in a trade yesterday morning. I mean, we got Chadwick Tromp, who's like our 4th string catcher. Wow. Jazz Chisholm felt the need to channel his inner Mel Blunt, and he knocked them out of the game at Yankee Stadium that Sunday morning about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Gary Sanchez somehow sprained his knee on Saturday, tagging out Matt Olson at the plate. How he did that, I have absolutely no idea. And Maverick Handley, who was our backup catcher while Gary Sanchez was out before Rutschman got hurt, he's got a bad back. I mean, what teams do you know in baseball are down to their 6th and 7th catchers of the year? That's been our season in a nutshell.
That's unheard of. Yeah, geez. But, I think Holiday, he's the one guy that I would certainly – and that's not to knock any of the other guys on the lineup, whether it be the aforementioned – I'm drawing blanks here. I will say this. You know what, John, now that I think about it, What about Cedric Mullins? Is he a guy that's on the block? Trading?
I would get rid of him, but not because he would bring such great assets in return. Jay, you know how I roll. You know, in today's especially age of Major League Baseball, there isn't a lot of guys out there that look like me that come obviously from American-based households. So, and especially if you wear my uniform, I'm definitely going to root like hell for you. But fair is fair. Cedric Mullins, he's not going to get any better as a Major League Baseball player at 30, 31 years of age. He's a tremendous outfielder in the sense he's got great range in the outfield. He's fast, athletic as hell. He can get to any fly ball. I mean, whether it's going backwards, sprinting for a bloop, trying to take away a bloop single. I mean, he's tremendous. His glove is among the best in all of baseball. The negative is that he has the arm strength of a 12-year-old, and then at the plate he's not a good hitter. I mean, since his 30-30 season in 2021, since the Orioles essentially have entered this window of expectation that they've been in since 2022, his play has gone completely in the direct opposite direction of the team. I mean, he comes out to start the year and has these hot Aprils and these hot early Mays where he's hitting the cover off the ball. I mean, the first 2 weeks of the season, he was second in the American League in RBIs behind Aaron Judge. And then, you know, he either gets hurt, unfortunately, but it is what he is. He's an injury-prone player, or he just cools off. He cools off. He can't hit for average. He can't hit for power. He strikes out too much. He's not one of this team's best hitters in high-leverage situations. I hate to say it, he's more so a bench player at this. On a really great team that has a solid center fielder. If this was the Dodgers, he'd be riding the bench. Sorry, but he'd be riding the bench.
No, I was curious to know about that. And the other guy I was thinking of, for whatever reason, I was drawing blanks, was Ryan O'Hearn. He's another guy that I would certainly be concerned about if I'm a Met pitcher or even reliever for that matter, because he's a dangerous hitter. Because I could go to the obvious, the Gunnar Hendersons of the world. And I mentioned Jackson Holiday because he's a leadoff hitter. But, yeah, Ryan O'Hearn is another guy that I would look at. I can see him come up in big spots, later innings where, I'd be a little nervous to pitch to him.
Yeah, he's been cold recently. Really, since the month of June came through now, he has really not hit. He originally was like hitting in the low 300s. His batting average is falling off, but it's all the way down to 287. And in his last 30 games, he's hitting 204 with an on-base percentage of 298. Last 15 and 7 games, he's hitting 217. So, and he's combined for only 3 home runs essentially in the last month. So, but like you said, sometimes the hot hitter will catch his stride going up against the Mets pitching. We'll see. Before we go, you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, obviously, lifelong, dating back to the 70s. What are your 2 cents on? Because I've had it. I've had it with the Steelers. I can't take it anymore. This idea that we are going to essentially turn back time like Cher and think it's 2019, 2020. We're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers. We're going to bring in DK Metcalf. Speaking of injury prone, we're going to bring DK Metcalf in. Oh, by the way, here's Jalen Ramsey in exchange for Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, Jonnu Smith. So Arthur Smith has somebody to throw the ball to, Aaron Rodgers to dump the ball off to on 3rd and 7s. And then with Tomlin still being there. And by the way, TJ Watt is still without a new contract. I cannot take this team seriously anymore. I can't do it. Like they think that they are trying to find something that isn't there. Now, I tell you, if I was in your shoes, I understand. I saw the video you did say, "Oh, who are these Pittsburgh Steelers going out there spending, being aggressive?" If I was you, I would be incensed. Because they know it's a 1-year thing. Rodgers is here for this year and that's it. And then you're stuck with this mess you created. Go ahead and sound off.
Yes, and before I even get started on that, because when I saw, I think it was last week, when I saw the title of your podcast where it said the Steelers are in denial, And
Yes.
if you could have seen my face at that point, I was just like, what? And it's funny enough because I haven't listened to, I have like a bazillion podcasts I got to listen to, so I got to catch up because I wanted to hear your take. And even though I'm getting a little bit of a dose of that based on that opening, and listen, I'm objective. I'm not one of those black and yellow pom-poms that everything is rosy, everything's perfect. No, it's not. Because this team has not won a playoff game for them forever. This team has been 9-8, 10-7. And yes, to me, even though it is impressive that Mike Tomlin has not had a season where he's coached under 500, all right, that's all well and good. Fantastic. But what does that mean come January? Obviously, it's meant nothing. And especially since their last Super Bowl visit when they lost to the Packers in Super Bowl 45. Since then, his record has been atrocious. So, yeah, he could have all the 10-7s and 9-8s and sprinkle a few years before that where he was 13-3 and 11-5, and it amounted to nothing. But I will say this. I have to give it up to Omar Khan, who just got a 3-year extension. And then also, when the Steelers lost to the Bills in the wildcard game 2 years ago, Art Rooney II came out and said that something's got to change. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers. We haven't won a playoff game since 2016, and this is 2 years ago, so that's 7 years. And now we're going to go on almost 10 years without winning a playoff game. And he says that there has to be some moves made. Something's got to give. We just cannot settle for getting into the postseason and just celebrating and resting on our laurels as that being the accomplishment. And I got to give him credit because he's given the keys to Omar Khan to say, do what you can to fix this team. Now, is it sustainable? Is it something that's for the long term built that way? Absolutely not. But you have to take the temperature of this conference because this conference, as you all know, and not only just a conference, but a division, which we could just talk about forever, it's loaded. So what are they supposed to do? Are they just supposed to sit on their hands and then hope to get a 6-11 record, which obviously we've never seen under a Mike Tomlin team, to get anywhere close to the top 10 to draft that quarterback or to draft that impact player that could change the fortunes of this franchise? No, they're always going to draft in the 20s. They're always going to be in a situation where they're not going to move up in the ranks as far as trading up in the draft. The Steelers aren't going to do that. But what they've been able to do is they've been able to try to pivot to the point where they're going to try to remain competitive or remain even relevant for that matter, which I understand that's a dangerous combination. But as a Steeler fan, this isn't anything that I've seen. That's why I wrote that on my channel for those curious, with a Steeler fan, even an NFL fan, is I even wrote, who the hell do the Pittsburgh Steelers think they are? Because when Tom Donahoe was their GM, when Kevin Colbert was their GM, they never even dipped their toe into free agency. They never even made trades the way they've made over the last couple of years. And Omar Khan has been like a drunken sailor. Now, I understood there's a salary cap, so it's not a situation where they're just going to be like Steve Cohen and the Mets and drive the payroll through the roof. But they've been able to bring in guys that you would think, wow, I would have never thought in a zillion years that the Steelers would trade for DK Metcalf and on top of that, give him a 5-year, $150 million deal. The Steelers never did that. So, and even though I had my qualms about that, because I'm thinking, all right, so now you bring in a stud receiver, who's throwing him the ball? Now, as it is, with Aaron Rodgers, I understand it's almost a match. I'm not going to say a match made in heaven, but it's a match made for at least 1 year because Aaron Rodgers had no team to go to and the Steelers had no quarterback to turn to. So it's almost as if they're going to try to see if this experiment works with a young offensive line that they built through the draft over the last few years. And obviously bringing in a young running back like Caleb Johnson that they drafted on top of the Kenneth Gainwells of the world. And you're right, you want to bring in the Jonnu Smiths and DK Metcalf and you want Pat Fryermuth to go along with Calvin Austin. It's not a bad offense. It's not. Now, it's all predicated on whether or not Rodgers can stay upright, but that's also the responsibility of the offensive line. Now, when you want to talk about T.J. Watt and his contract, to me, he still has 1 more year left on his deal, and I get he wants to get paid based on what Myles Garrett got. All right, fine. Are the Steelers going to do that? Quite possibly. They still have money that they can work with, and, of course, they probably have to do something with contracts in order for him to get that type of money because he's going to want $40 million a year. But I am not going to lose my sleep if T.J. Watt's going to pull a Le'Veon Bell, which I don't think he's going to, because how I look at this team, even without T.J. Watt, that's a big void, but they're able to plug in guys, as I've called throughout the years, they're linebacker you. So whether your name is Alex Highsmith, whether your name is Nick Herbig, whether your name is, I understand he's 100 years old, but Cameron Hayward, you still think is going to be effective. And how I look at it is that the defense is still pretty decent, and the biggest upgrade that they've gotten is in their secondary. Because when you bring in Darius Slay, you could talk about, all right, he's kind of a reach there, maybe long in the tooth. Jalen Ramsey, his best days are behind him, but they're probably going to move him to safety. And this whole thing with Minka Fitzpatrick, how he was the one guy on the team that kind of didn't want to hear it anymore. It was like 10 plus 1, and he was the plus 1, especially during that Christmas Day game against the Chiefs. That's when it all kind of really blew up in his face. So, all right, so Minka goes, but you bring in Ramsey. So hopefully with him, maybe he looks at this as an opportunity to try to bring this team at least to a decent playoff run. And when I mean decent, at least win one game, and then you take a chance in the divisional round. But with that being said, I have to give it up to Omar Khan, because if he sat on his hands and did nothing, believe me, and the other Steeler fans that think, oh, what do they think they're doing? They got a bunch of old men on their team. This is an old folks home. Well, what's the alternative? Not do anything? Sit on your hands? Is it a bit of a risk, reach? All right, fine. But if they just did not do anything and they went into the season with Mason Rudolph, and you had a cranky Minka Fitzpatrick coming back for another year on top of everything else that I just detailed, the Steelers fans will be up in arms. So you know what? You can't have it both ways. So accept what they're doing now, hope it works, and if it doesn't work, right, you person do whatever you want, but at the same time, it's not for a lack of trying. And lastly, considering with the way the division is, and obviously the conference, if they weren't going to do anything, they would have been mired in mediocrity for the whole year. Now, their ceiling could be 12-5. I'm not saying it's going to be, but it could be that. And their floor will probably be, in all likelihood, 9-8. Does that get them to a postseason? Yeah, maybe. It's probably going to be a first-round exit. But 12-5, who knows? Maybe 12-5 gets you a 5 seed, and you go up against the Jacksonvilles of the world, or even Houston for that matter, as opposed to having to go to Kansas City or Buffalo in the first round. So that's how I look at it. I know Steelers fans, they may look at me like, oh, you're nuts. You know what you're talking about. Well, guess what? If Mason Rudolph's the guy, no offense to him, if he's the guy you want starting on the center week 1 in MetLife against the Jets, then God bless you, because it's going to be a long year if that's the case.
You make a good point. You make a good point. You're right. You know, you can't blame the Steelers for trying. You know, certain Steeler fans, you know, are fickle. You can't have it both ways. They'll kick and scream if they tank and willingly go 2-15. But the payoff, obviously, is that you tear it down to the studs, which is what they should have done a few years ago. But then, you know, listen, I've been there with my team 6 years ago. It's not a fun process during those 17, 18 weeks during the season when you look at everyone else who's winning and talking Super Bowl and playoff aspirations, and your team, you know, is unwatchable for 3 hours every single week. So I get that. And I have a difference of opinion, but I don't think you're wrong in your assessment of the philosophy in which the Steelers went about building the team. I do say is that because TJ Watt's so great, there is going to be a cap of how good this team could be if everything works out with all the other superstar players. There is going to be a cap with how well the Steelers are going to play. The Steelers cannot win 12 games this season without TJ Watt. Even if Aaron Rodgers plays at MVP level, because his ability to wreck games and to take over and just be a clutch, high leverage pass rusher, it would be irresponsible of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, again, I don't think he's going to pull Le'Veon Bell either, but it'd be irresponsible of the Pittsburgh Steelers to go into the season and say, hey, we're going to bank on everyone DK staying healthy, vintage Jalen Ramsey, the Darius Slay we saw in the film. We're going to count on everything to work out according to plan and say we're going to win a Super Bowl. Meanwhile, TJ Watt's without come on. I mean, if you thought, you're counting on players that you haven't seen yet play in your uniform, and you know what you're getting with TJ Watt, and you want to go ahead and play hardball. It's ass backwards. Doesn't make any sense. My thing is, to your point, all I know is that if this team is as good as some may say and some may think, Mike Tomlin is no excuse. I am so tired. I've had it. No more excuses. Well, he never has a sub 500 season. Who cares? We have the same conversation with the Yankees as we do with the Steelers. Is the goal to be the best and to win the championship at the end of the season, or just be good enough where you're worthwhile during the regular season. You can wave your pom-poms, hang the banner, and says, "Yay, we made the playoff." I mean, make up your mind which one is it. And when you do, please let me know so I can change my evaluations of how you play and how you perform in a given season accordingly. No more excuses, okay? His last 3 playoff wins were against Alex Smith, Matt Moore, and A.J. McCarron. I don't want to hear it anymore. If he's some great Hall of Fame coach, which many people believe and make him out to be, then find a way. And don't sit here and give me the Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs dynasty nonsense. That many of them, but the Ravens find a way to win playoff games. Sean McDermott finds a way to win playoff games. My idiot head coach, Zach Taylor, finds a way to win playoff games. No more excuses. Enough is enough. If this is a roster that can possibly win a division, all bets are off with Tomlin now. Enough is enough.
No, you know what, John? I agree with you 100%. And it's weird because he is not he per se as an individual, but just Tomlin and him being a coach of the Steelers is so polarizing because there are so many fans out there that want his head. And I understand because all those regular seasons above 500, it's amounted to nothing, especially in the last decade. And I'm with you 1,000% when it comes to that. But then I ask those Steeler fans, the ones that I engage with, and even some of the strangers, when they come out and say, "Oh, I want Tomlin gone," so on and so forth, on all these social media platforms. So then my first question to them is, who do you want to replace him? And you know what their answer is? "Oh, I don't know. I just want him gone." Well, you got to have somebody you're going to replace him with if you're so adamant about having him not coach the team anymore. And I don't want to hear back to last year, bringing Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's not coaching in Pittsburgh. No matter how much money they give him, he is not going to coach the team. And they can talk about, oh, there's this hotshot assistant here or this defensive assistant there, because, of course, the Steelers are going to hire an offensive guy, as you know, between Bill Cowher, Chuck Noll, and Mike Tomlin. They're all defensive guys. So that's the thing that bothers me about the Steelers fan, because they want Tomlin's head, but they don't have somebody to replace him. Where if you had somebody to replace him, we could banter back and forth about, then I could say, "Oh, you know what? I didn't think about that guy." Or, "You know what? Whatever." Right away, they want to get the next best guy in. And we all know that that's not going to be the right fit, or it's just going to be next to impossible to happen. So those are the Steel fans that I tune out and be like, I don't want to hear it. But generally, they don't come up with a guy, "Oh, I just want him gone because I've had enough of him." All right, well, you know, it's not like a situation where it's that easy just to get rid of a guy and then you can have the next warm body in there and then you're going to curse him out too. You want to have somebody that you know, if you follow the team, is credible, somebody you know that's a different voice, that maybe could be a guy that could get everybody in that locker room on the same page, et cetera, where Tomlin's voice, who knows, maybe it's tuned out with a lot of players over the years, although Cam Hayward hasn't said that. So, and obviously I'm going to take his word for it as a guy that's been on the Steelers since 2011. But it's a thing where the Steelers fan gets me irked because they don't have that replacement. And lastly, on top of that, I think next year or this coming season, it's all going to be predicated on that offensive line. Everybody can talk about Rodgers, and rightfully so, and I get it. But if they can't protect Rodgers, then Rodgers is going to be shot. So as many people are going to say, "Oh, Rodgers is not going to have a big year," or whatever, and that's probably true, but it's all going to be predicated on the offensive line. And people could say, "Well, that could go for any quarterback in football." Well, now with a guy that's 41 years old, I understand 2 years removed from his Achilles, and maybe the mental and psychological, just that disadvantage to him is now gone. He feels 100% comfortable, but still, nobody's expecting him at 41 years of age to be anything close to what he was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Right.
So therefore, that's where the offensive line is going to have to be, that fortress to keep him at bay, or at least keep him in the pocket so he can get his throws off, and maybe they could have a big year. Because if he's going to be having to scramble left and scramble right and scramble for his life, forget about it. It's going to be toast, and their season's going to go up in smoke. So for everybody that's going to think, "Oh, it's all on Aaron Rodgers," well, a lot of it is on him. But if that young offensive line does not gel and play cohesive and be to where they were drafted over the last few years, then there's no hope for the Steelers in 2025.
The great Jason Nazario, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, before we go, let everyone out there watching where they can find you. Go ahead.
Jai, I appreciate that. And this is always a fun time. Anytime you reach out to ask to come on, you know I'm more than happy, more than available to be here for you. As far as I'm concerned, Instagram, it's JAYREELZ, JAYREELZ. Same for, I'm also on TikTok, whatever, but of course YouTube, because on YouTube I also post daily shorts on what's happening in sports. I give you like a 1-minute blurb on my thoughts about what's happening on that given day, anything that has to do with sports. Not only just the 4 majors, I'm talking Wimbledon now, as I'm getting wrapped up into that. You have the Open Championship for the golf fan, that's coming up. But obviously with baseball, you're going to get a lot of that. Whatever that's happening in the NBA, NHL, football, etc., I got you covered, as well as Monday and Thursday on the podcast, Wednesday live stream on YouTube. And yeah, you can find me on any of those platforms.
He will be with you on Wednesday to dissect why in the hell Brandon Young is still on the Orioles roster when he's not a major league pitcher. Thanks to Mike Elias and his great genius. I digress. Jason, always good to talk to you.
Powers too, which I know you're stewing over that one.
They traded Kyle Stowers, and he has pitched well thus far this year. Knock on wood that he keeps it up. Trevor Rogers was sensational against the Braves yesterday. We'd be here for another 3 hours dissecting that trade alone. Mike Elias is going to be the end of me. That's the great Jason Nazario, host of the JAYREELZ Podcast here on the JAYREELZ Podcast. Jason Nazario, the great host of the JAYREELZ Podcast. Nice to have him with us. NBA, quick. Still got some off-season stuff to comment on. Dame time is over in Milwaukee. They cut Damian Lillard to make room to bring in Miles Turner from Indiana. It's a good move on the part of Milwaukee. You can clearly get the sense that they're not waiting for Giannis to make a decision. They're essentially going to put together the best team they possibly can. That Giannis would be okay with if he prefers to stay. If not, add a little bit of talent that will make their product watchable and somewhat competitive this upcoming season if Giannis does go. Surprising that Miles Turner, one of the longest tenured Pacers that was on that roster this past season, that had just as much of a hand to play in them making it to Game 7 of the NBA Finals, obviously, as Halliburton, as T.J. McConnell, and Obi Toppin. Surprising that they let him walk. I understand that they realized that they were not going to sniff a return to the NBA Finals in 25 and 26 with no Halliburton. But, I mean, what about 26 and 27 and 27 and 28 and 28 and 29? Very shocking move that they allowed him to essentially go unprotected to join the Milwaukee Bucks. But the Bucks cut Damian Lillard, torn Achilles in the postseason last year. Not last year, but back in April of this past season. In his 30s, who knows if he'll ever be the same dynamic scorer again. Rough part of the business, but, it is what it is. Nuggets, they deserve credit for reloading, improving their roster. Good job by them not being satisfied with the frustrating results of the 24-25 season. Excellent job putting putting a better team around Jokic. They bring back one of his appreciated compadres from the 23 championship season. So the Denver Nuggets reloading here in the early stages of free agency. They deserve tremendous credit. The Knicks hire Mike Brown to be their new head coach. That is a move that is very underwhelming. Doesn't make any sense. Is a little bit of a backwards decision if you ask me. Yes, you can give me the numbers and that Tom Thibodeau defensive coach said they go the other way and bring the offensive guy in, and outside of his final year in Sacramento, the solid years, including the one in which they made the postseason, he put together some very good offensive teams with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis and those Sacramento Kings teams, especially the one in 2023. And this is what he does. And he is a very good offensive coach. And that's what the Knicks need, because they went too much ISO, which was an agreed point that we screamed and yelled about throughout the Indiana series, going ISO ball and Tatum just pounding the basketball, and the offense and their rhythm gets very stagnant and it gets very stale. But I mean, Mike Brown, I understand the coach of the year stuff. I get that, but that does not hire that hire does not scream a coach that can win the Knicks an NBA championship as early as this upcoming season. I'm sorry. Is he as good of a coach as Tom Thibodeau? I mean, he's either at Thibodeau's level, if not slightly below, and if you ask me in 2025. I mean, if I'm going out of my way to make the assertive, aggressive move and firing Tom Thibodeau, the next coach I'm bringing in is better than he by at least a nice half mile, if not whole ass country mile. And I don't think competitively Mike Brown and Tom Thibodeau, there's that great big of a difference between the two coaches, either what you see from their teams via the eye test or what history and their resume side by side will tell you. I don't feel that move. I don't. I mean, obviously they asked a bunch of coaches. They asked Jason Kidd. He said no. They asked Ime Udoka. He said no. They being their current employing teams. So I get that. Michael Malone, I guess he didn't want to go in that direction. Jay Wright was not going to come out of retirement and graduate to the pro game to coach the Knicks, even with the Villanova connections. So, I mean, they interviewed Don Staley. I mean, maybe it's just me. I'm, not being afraid to take a chance every once in a while, not being afraid to deal with any backlash, or timid to shy away from what people think of what some may say. That's just how Jai Shields personally is wired. I would have, if the money was right, and if I could convince her to leave the women's college game, I would have went out there and tried to make some history and make a statement and hire Dawn Staley. It's just, I understand headlines and she would have probably had it worse than any coach, any manager in New York, this side of Aaron Boone and Tom Coughlin. But hey, sometime I go back to that quote that Vince Wilfork said in the Man in the Arena docu-series, talking about the 14 New England Patriots with the defense and the Malcolm Butler play. You can't be great without taking an exponential risk. You can't expect to be great with finding an opportunity and taking advantage of a situation where you're going to have to throw caution to the wind, take a leap of faith, close your eyes, say a prayer, and do something that's unorthodox. I would have taken a chance. Higher. The conference is, again, not going to be that impossible. It's not impossible to get through. It's not going to be nowhere near as difficult, in terms of navigating through the 82, and then obviously come playoff time, get to the NBA Finals. If your first season goes well, and if she wins, especially her first year there, I mean, they would literally build her a statue the night they win the NBA championship. They would have, hypothetically. I mean, she would have been bigger in that town than Judge, Juan Soto, and Frankie Lindor put together. Would have been bigger than all of them put together. Maybe it's me engaging in wishful thinking. I would have liked her a hell of a lot better than Mike Brown. I understand women's college basketball compared to the NBA, two different sports, but championships are championships. I mean, Mike Brown is coaching the NBA for how long? And he has no ring. I mean, at some point, what are we doing? I mean, you might as well have just kept Thibodeau. And if they thought their defense was bad last year under Tibbs, Mike Brown's teams aren't exactly, defenses are not exactly Mike Brown's team's calling card. So if you thought the defense was pathetic against the Pacers in Game 6 and was pathetic and was not good at times against Boston when they got killed that one game at MSG, and you thought it was bad then, baby, does Mike Brown got something special for y'all coming up this season. But, yeah, not impressed, and that is not a hire that exactly moves the needle, in my estimation, regarding the 2025 and 2026 New York Knickerbockers. I meant to give you my 2 cents on this, and somehow it slipped my mind. The NBA draft is an absolute disaster. First off, why they are so hell-bent, they being the NBA, they're the only league that holds their draft literally less than a week after they finish crowning a champion. Can you imagine if the NFL draft, now they could get away with it because February is the dullest and most dead month in the sports calendar, and it is the National Football League. It's omnipresent. They can pull 15 to 40 to 50 something million viewers out of their tail for a non-Super Bowl event like it's nothing. So they could get away with it if they wanted to, but the NFL is not, they're greedy, but they're not ran by idiots. Can you imagine, and not to mention the team that did win the Super Bowl will be kicking and screaming, hey, Raj, what are you doing? Allow us to have our moment in the sun as Super Bowl champions. What the hell are you doing? Quickly turning the page to the next season, trotting out all these hundreds of draft picks out here for. So the owner of the championship team among the players and the coaching staff alike wouldn't stand for it if it was the NFL. But can you imagine if the NFL held their draft literally 5-6 days after the Super Bowl? They hold this Eagles win the Super Bowl on Friday. What day was that? The 9th. And the NFL draft is that Thursday, that Friday, the 13th and the 14th. Can you imagine if the NFL held their draft 5-6 days after the Super Bowl? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Major League Baseball held their MLB? Now, their scheduling for their draft isn't exactly ideal either. I mean, they're the only sport that holds their damn draft right smack dab in the middle of their freaking season, in the middle of their All-Star week. I mean, just, ugh. And before, it used to be on a random night in June when there were actual live games on. I go to MLB Network and they're giving me some commentary on a bunch of players who I've never heard of. I care about the MLB players that are in uniform playing right here, right now, playing in games tonight. I could give a crap about what some outfielders' projected career is going to look like, who's 6'2", 185 pounds out of some high school in the middle of Austin, Texas. I'm not interested. But baseball, it ain't ideal holding their draft in the middle of the season. But can you imagine if they held their draft 5-6 days after they crowned a World Series champion? I mean, what are we doing here, people? I mean, you can't, and they have the luxury of their offseason taking place. It's not like baseball where their offseason takes place during the heat and the heart and soul of the country's most popular sport, alongside the NBA and college basketball regular season. The NBA's offseason falls, the beginning of it falls right in the middle of the dead period in sports where there's nothing going on outside of a few golf and tennis tournaments here and there. But in terms of team sports, it's MLB baseball, WNBA, and that is it. No NFL, nothing. No college football or basketball, nothing. I mean, why not hold it now? Why not hold it now? Why not now? You cannot hold it the first full week in July. Your free agency period is that first few days in early July, unofficially beginning June 30th. The NFL holds their draft after free agency starts. What sense does it make to hold your draft before free agency starts? So the players that aren't even technically NBA players yet, what sense does that make? And the established veterans are the ones that got families, they got children, they got wives, they got to worry about moving different cities. If they go and play with the Toronto Raptors, they got to worry about customs and all that other sort of stuff. And some of these guys, not all of them, but some of them, single guys, their only responsibility is me, myself, and I, and maybe a girlfriend. And that is it. Makes no sense. No sense. They crown a champion Sunday the 22nd. We got new players coming in that Thursday and Friday the 26th and the 27th. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And yet the thing that kills me is that and rightfully so, they chastise the sports fan or the basketball fan that was not exactly in love with this year's matchup are the two small market teams. These guys are good players, but not, household names a la Steph Curry and LeBron and Luka and Jokic. And all they did was chastise those that knocked the small market homey feel of this year's finals. Yet Oklahoma City, they win their first championship in the history of the franchise. They only get a full week to themselves to bask in their glory and their championship. SGA and Caruso and Jalen Wood. No. Sam Presti, the GM, and Dagnall head. No. They get 4 or 5 days, and then right to the draft we go. I feel bad for the poor people that work at ESPN that just got finished completing that marathon that is the NBA postseason from mid-late April through the finals. I mean, that's a 2-month marathon of being on the air all in the early stages of the NBA playoffs, all hours of the day and night, late nights, red eyes, flying cross country. We have a new champion. Oh, by the way, you get a nice little 3, 4, 5 day reprieve. Now get on a plane and head from Oklahoma City to Brooklyn to cover the draft for the next 2 days. I mean, come on. Not fair to the Thunder, not fair to the people that have to cover the NBA through the NBA finals. And it's not fair to the league itself. And it's also not fair to the upcoming ensuing free agents. And then they can't even get it straight when they swap picks, having the players show up on stage with silver with the wrong hats on. Another simple thing that the NFL does right. Like, guys, it's not that hard. Find a way to get the swapping of the picks announced first, so the player that gets selected puts on the appropriate team hat, so there's not a sense of awkwardness and swapping out hats and all of this other goofy amateur hour unprofessional bull jive happening on live television. It cannot be that freaking difficult. Can't be. Now, this last problem with the draft's not their fault. Because the NBA and the game of basketball has grown so greatly and grown to such a large extent in the last, 20 to 25 years, that it's become so international where, the international player you've never heard of. You've never seen them play in great context like you do the college players, obviously. It's so you're crap up against the wall and hope it sticks when it comes to your opinions and your analysis of international prospects. Because you're going off of a small sample size of footage and of games that you have access to, that you've seen, in little snippets and trunkets on the internet, or whatever game you've stayed up to 2:00 in the morning to watch that's being broadcasted here from overseas. But you can't help that. That comes with when you grow your game globally and internationally. It happens. So, and they can't help that. They can't fix that. It's a global game. If we don't know what some 6'7", or 6'8" forward from Serbia's game is like, we have to live with it. They can't fix that. They can't help that. What they can help is making sure that the players get in the right damn hats. If the NFL can find a way, you can find a way. Because if nothing else, it just makes for a smoother television production. And that's why you advertise the damn thing to begin with in the first place, is because you want to drain every last ounce of juice that the NBA can provide as a television product. And it makes a piss poor television product when you have players swapping hats left and right like it's a springtime, opening day of the baseball season at their local lids, and they're flipping on hats every single 5 seconds to see which one they like the best and to see which size fits their dome the best out of the former and the latter. And they're swapping hats left and right. And, oh, by the way, let's have it 3-4 days after we just got finished crowning an NBA champion. And then another added ingredient to stupidity, we're going to have it before the free agency period starts. Something that the NFL also doesn't do. Now, baseball, again, they have theirs mid-season. But if you have to pick the lesser of two evils, I would rather have them have it in the middle of the season when there's no active games going on the Sunday night before the All-Star game, rather than them hold it in late October, early November, 4 or 5 days after the deciding game of the World Series. But it's so counterproductive. It's downright. One addendum I wanted to make before we say goodbye. I was editing and was like, hey, I didn't discuss this in terms of baseball. How could I forget? It came down late yesterday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening that the Washington Nationals had fired their manager Dave Martinez and GM Mike Rizzo. Very surprising move. Granted, the Washington Nationals that had a pretty respectable start to the 2025 campaign have a 37-53 record. They've lost 6 out of their last 10 games. Just got swept by the Boston Red Sox at home because they can't get anybody out. Consecutive blowouts, one after the next. They are, let's see, their winning percentage is about 0.007 percentage points worse than the Pittsburgh Pirates. The second worst winning percentage in the National League at .418. The Nationals are sitting at .411 with a negative 86 run differential. But it was very surprising considering this was a developmental year for them, still in the midst of a rebuild. I said, with the young talent that's starting to prosper and bloom and come into their own preseason, that you'd expect them to win, have a win total in the low 70s, obviously not make the postseason, not even be in the conversations of sniffing the postseason, but very surprising. And then not only that, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the MLB draft is less than a week away, and firing your GM mid-season, which is something does not happen across all sports. Historically, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, teams do not fire their GMs mid-season. And within Major League Baseball, they damn sure don't fire their GMs less than a month, let alone a week before the draft is coming down the tailpipe. So very surprising move to fire Mike Rizzo. And then on top of the fact, last I checked, there is 2 Washington Nationals that are making it deservedly so, making it down to Atlanta next week as National League All-Stars. So, for a team that's, nearly 20 games under 500, that's in last place by a country mile, to have 2 he must be doing something right. What did they expect that the Nationals were supposed to, be 52-30? I don't understand the disconnect within the Nationals organization where they said the problem with our team and why we're in last place is because, especially the GM. They weren't expected to contend. They're not in a championship win now window like my Orioles are. It's just very odd, very odd. And then to do it less than a week before the draft, this is the even more peculiar thing. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I'll Google it right here just so I make sure I'm right. Don't they have the number 1 pick in the draft coming up? If I'm not mistaken, 2025 MLB draft. Yeah, they got the number 1 pick in the draft. They pick 1, the Angels pick 2. Yeah, very weird. Very, very, very weird move. And Dave Martinez, listen, I understand. Now, to be honest, in full transparency, I'm not sitting down and I haven't watched the Nationals game since they played my Orioles back in mid-May. The series, ironically enough, that Brandon Hyde got fired right in the middle of. But I can't put my thumb as to why. I understand cleaning house. I get it. But if you're going to clean house and fire your GM and fire your manager, it's the headline in The Athletic. It tells it all. Firing Mike Rizzo and Dave Martinez makes some sense for the Nationals, but the timing doesn't. Exactly. Firing your manager mid-season, I get it. My team did it 2 months. We've seen that in baseball 100 times, and forever we'll see it from now until the end of time. But again, firing the GM with him in the middle of the season, less than a week before the draft, in a season that you were not expected to win anything anyway. Okay, maybe the Nationals, their expectation, their thought was to be where the Marlins are essentially, and that's less than 10 game, 15 to 10, if not less than, games under 500. The Marlins are 40 and 48. Maybe the Nationals ownership brass thought that that the record that the Marlins have now was supposed to be their record. But I mean, no matter how you slice the pie, the Marlins and the Nationals are not playoff teams. They are not playoff teams. They had no expectation or any. They never say this, but they never had any realistic goals of making it to the postseason. And to fire your manager midseason when, I mean, 2 out of the 26 guys on your roster are going to the All-Star game, got selected to go to the All-Star game, and you still have a nice nucleus of talent that's starting to come into their own that you got in return from the San Diego Padres organization from the Juan Soto. Very weird. I understand, they were getting their tails kicked left and right by the Boston Red Sox in their building. They lost 11-2, 10-3, and 6-4 yesterday. I get it. But, I mean, come on. Very, very, very weird. Dave Martinez, firing him is not going to make the Washington Nationals, while they're in the midst of a rebuild, a better baseball team. I'm sorry. You want to let him go and fire him at the end of the season on, January 7th? That's fine. July 7th, when there's about 90-ish games left, there's 90-ish amount of games left in the year. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. And keep in mind, before they got their tails kicked by the Red Sox, keep in mind, this is the same Washington Nationals team that took, 2 of 3 from the best team in the American League in the Detroit Tigers at home? I understand the Red Sox are not a good baseball team, and outside of really this series against Washington, they've been pathetic since they traded Rafi Devers. But, I mean, what expectations did they have? I mean, you take a look at the last handful of series. Okay, they lost the series to Colorado Rockies, and they got swept back series by the Mets and the Marlins. Okay, division rivals, but they're better than the Nationals are. One team's got eyes on trying to win a World Series. Another team is slightly better than you are. Big deal. They lost the series to Colorado Rockies. Not ideal. They lost back-to-back series, but granted, I mean, these are West Coast trips. Young team against teams that are in win-now mode. The Dodgers and the Padres asking an awful lot. They didn't get swept in either of those two series. I mean, they went, 2-4. Now listen, you guys know me. I am small victories and more victories is not my vocabulary, but I'm no idiot. You kind of have to, when it comes to rebuilding teams, you have to grade their performances and grade how they do on a bit of a curve, and you can't, kick and scream. Now, if it becomes a long, drawn out thing, again, you can sit up here and say, well, Jai, I understand what you're saying, but the Washington Nationals this year, given the talent they have, should not be 37 and 53. Okay, fine. That makes sense in firing Dave Martinez. It doesn't make sense out of firing Mike Rizzo mid-season. That just don't compute for me. I mean, taking 2 out of 3 from the best team by far in the American League from start to finish, from opening day through today, Monday, July the 7th, has to account for something. Anyway, that was a very, very puzzling move. And it goes to show you, and if you're the Yankees who still have your thumb up your ass, word to the wise. These are two gentlemen that helped contribute to put together many of playoff teams for the Washington Nationals, that put together and managed the team in 2019 that won a World Series championship against the nemesis you can never beat in the Houston Astros, by the way, on the road, no less. Two gentlemen that put together a championship team to win the Nationals, their first ever championship in the history of the franchise, a short 6 years ago. They're out the door, not even a full 6 seasons later. Meanwhile, Boone and Cashman have a job for life. Two guys that can never and will never beat the Astros when the money is laid out in the middle of the table, with a Yankee team that stinks in the postseason at Minute Maid Park against Houston. that did nothing if you're Cashman but blame the cheating scandal in 2017. And then if you're Boone in 2020, what year was that where he stood up here and made that excuse that the roof was open and that's why the Yankees couldn't hit? Or the reason why the Astros were hitting the ball over the ballpark because the roof was open. I mean, oh my God. Can't make this shit up, people. Cannot make this shit up. Okay, now we're done. Like, subscribe, share, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Be safe, be well. Talk to you guys next week. See ya.